Roughly a month was what he figured it'd take me packing my god-tier talent. The technique featured 10 distinct layers, spanning 10 levels apiece, and Layer 1 was handed straight to me. Covering levels 100 to 100 and 10 touching Layer 2 was strictly off-limits until I actually hit 110 otherwise. That insane divine power would straight up blow my body apart. An explanation was given by him regarding something major about the level 100 milestone. Once the basics were completely mastered by me, divine energy would flip my physical form for the very first time. Following that, the entire measurement system underwent a massive shift. My baseline of 10,000 trillion health points would get converted down into 100 units of divine blood, while my base 1,000 trillion attack power would morph into 10 points of divine attack, a single unit of divine blood, translated to a staggering 100 trillion regular health. Mental calculations were run quickly in my head, a 46 trillion times multiplier effect, multiplied by those 100 units of divine blood, pushed the grand total to roughly 4.6 quadrillion. In divine blood, lining up right with my current stats, a promise was made by him to ship out this month's divine power pills, along with a brand new set of level 100 eternal grade gear tomorrow. Those pills couldn't be touched by me until the technique's foundation was locked down, but the second that happened, they'd seriously turbocharge my training progress. Stepping outside, Lady Hua was spotted waiting for me there. Those other wives who used to look down on her so much were keeping a safe distance, now their eyes filled with cautious vibes and nervous flattery, instead of open contempt. Stepping forward, one of them awkwardly offered congratulations. Silently acknowledging it, Lady Hua just offered a cold nod. Standing guard right behind her was Uncle Zhang. He murmured under his breath that with my god-tier talent, reaching at least 199 was a sure thing. Making Lady Hua's fingers twitch tightly, 199 happened to be the Star-Lord's exact tier, meaning her boy could actually attain that height someday. A gentle inquiry was dropped about me being hungry. Answering that I was a bit famished, she smiled and led me home for dinner consisting of 4 cozy home-style dishes and a warm soup. She kept piling food onto my plate non-stop, urging me to eat up because I looked way too skinny. Meanwhile, Saint Tianjia was seen emerging from the awakening hall looking completely crushed, and low-key depressed. His holy tier felt like absolute trash compared to the broken god tier. Patience was what the Empress advised him to exercise. With a whole century of cultivation on the line, literally anything could pop off. He totally caught the vibe of what she was saying. Right after dinner, I posted up in Shang Yuan's room and finally cracked open the Holy Light technique. Brilliant golden letters glowed across golden pages, each individual word pressed so deep into the paper. It looked like it was legit carved by hand. This saint-level method could be pushed all the way to level 200. My eyes were glued to those words, knowing full well this was the start of an insanely long grind, though I honestly had zero plans to take it slow. Unfolding the Holy Light technique, I immediately locked in to start reading. The vocabulary made sense when taken word by word. Guide divine power straight into the body, circulate it through the limbs, and unlock those hidden divine channels. Yet once they were all strung together, I had no clue what any of it actually meant in practice. Like, how are you even supposed to guide something you can't physically see or feel? Taking deep breaths over and over got me absolutely nowhere. Total silence. There was zero sensation and zero response, leaving me completely stuck without even finding the starting door, let alone figuring out how to push it open, until a genius idea hit me. I had a whole squad of 1,000 clones scattered all over Origin City. So what if every single one of them practiced simultaneously? Maybe tossing 1,000 attempts out at once would speed things up drastically. Without wasting a second, I flashed the order down, and 1,000 clones pulled backup copies of the technique from soul storage, immediately starting their sessions in cramped rental rooms, shadowy alley corners, and dusty tavern booths. Out on the bridges, 1,000 different versions of me were breathing deep, all desperately trying to trigger a spark amidst endless failures. Then, right around 2 hours later, the game changed. A faint electric jolt suddenly surged straight from the top of my head down to my soles, running like a live current that instantly grabbed my focus. The sensation magnified instantly, feeling like thousands of microscopic needles creeping right underneath my skin. It swept from my fingers through my arms into my chest, plunged down into my legs, and then looped right back up again. One circuit completed, then 2, then a third. Suddenly, sharp cracking noises echoed from deep inside my core, sounding just like thick ice fracturing or heavy chains snapping in half. My spine began to stretch outward aggressively, every single vertebra popping and pulling apart. A rush of raw divine power poured straight down from the void above, freezing cold like winter, cascading like a raging river rushing down my spinal column. It stung intensely before finally punching through the barrier. The energy blasted like lightning all the way from my skull to my tailbone, and honestly, it didn't even feel like pain anymore. Man, the relief washing over me was absolutely unreal. Imagine a stiff joint finally snapping into place after being frozen for literal years. With that satisfying pop echoing in my head, my eyes flicked open to pull up the status UI. Right there in glowing letters it read, "Holy Light Technique Basics Conquered." Underneath, my divine power was sitting at a big fat 0 out of 1,000, while my health was clocking in at an insane 46 million billion divine blood. As for my offensive power, a measly 10 divine attack points. This new, surging energy had completely rewired my entire physical form. That was the undeniable perk of securing that initial divine blessing. Every single one of my old stats had been forcefully migrated over to this upgraded system. And get this, nailing down those fundamentals only took me a couple of hours. We aren't talking about a month-long grind or some insane 90-day boot camp here. Just 2 hours, baby, having 1,000 shadow clones grinding in perfect sync. Had literally speedrun months of tedious cultivation into absolute dust. Sitting there in the dim room, I realized the real cultivation phase was finally unlocked. There was a catch, though. Those essential divine power pills weren't slated to drop until the following day, so for the rest of the night my only play was to try siphoning the incredibly faint wisps of divine energy. Just drifting aimlessly in the atmosphere, taking a deep, focused breath, I initiated a single, complete loop of the newly acquired technique. The system chimed, "Divine Power plus 0.0000001. Talk about a pathetically slow nothing burger. Honestly, you'd have better luck trying to top off an Olympic swimming pool using a literal eyedropper. However, when you factor in my 1,000 clones pulling the exact same maneuver concurrently, that microscopic gain was bumped up to 0.001 per breath, instead of the original fraction. So I ordered my entire clone army to keep grinding the technique while the moon crossed the sky. After 10 grueling hours, the morning sun peeked through the blinds, and I refreshed the UI. It read, "Divine Power 1/1000. 10 full hours of grinding, utilizing an entire battalion of 1,000 clones, just to secure a solitary point toward the grand total required to hit level 101. Doing the math, if I strictly relied on pulling ambient energy from the air, each level up was going to cost me a mind-numbing 500 days. Yeah, that pace was completely chalked. My entire progression strategy hinged heavily on those divine power pills. Getting delivered today. Sure enough, bright and early the next morning, Uncle Zhang strolled in, carrying a silver tray that held a sleek spatial ring. Stashed inside that bad boy was a clean stack of 300 divine power pills, alongside a completely decked-out level 100 Eternal Tier equipment set. Let me tell you, this gear was absolutely goated. The chest plate alone injected an extra 1,000 points directly into my divine blood pool. A matching band provided another 500 to my blood stat, plus a solid 50-point boost to my divine attack. And topping it off was a blade that spiked my offensive capability by an extra 100 points. Once I got fully kitted out in the new drip, my vitality skyrocketed, hitting a frankly ridiculous 73.6 quadrillion on the divine blood scale. Meanwhile, my damage output surged to a very respectable 160 divine attack. Basically, my overall power level was now roughly 15 times heavier than before I equipped it. With the gear sorted, my attention pivoted straight to that stash of pills. A quick scan revealed that popping a single one of these would grant me 10 solid points. Since my god-tier talent demanded exactly 1,000 points to trigger a level up, the math was finally looking good. It took a solid 6 hours for just one pill to break down. My baseline pace was usually capping out at 3 pills a day. With 30 points on the line, that translated to 33 days per level. That closely aligned with the Emperor's forecast of needing 100 years to hit 199, but let's be real, I was built different. Having clones changed the game, so I dumped all 300 pills straight into soul storage. Then I gave the command, sending 299 of my less occupied duplicates into action. Every single one grabbed a pill from our shared inventory. I popped one myself, making it 300 people absorbing energy simultaneously. The pill torched my stomach like literal liquid fire. It was pure, concentrated divine power. It hit nothing like those pathetic wispy traces lingering in the air. The surge ramped straight through my blood vessels and bones. 2 hours later, I crashed right into level 101. Another wave of divine blessing completely rewired my physique. 4 hours in, level 102 was unlocked. 6 hours down, and I landed at level 103. All 300 pills were completely absorbed. 6 hours total for 3 whole levels. Whatever would take Saint Tianjiao a grueling 200 days, I speedrun in a quarter of a day. Even leaving clones out of the equation, a god-tier talent would still need 100 days just to burn through 300 pills. My clones made the whole process over 100 times faster. That twin body and shadow clone glitch was ridiculously overpowered. Even someone dragging the worst talent imaginable could effortlessly outpace a god-tier genius by having 1,000 clones grind together. Only problem was, reality hit hard. The stash of pills was completely gone. Siphoning divine energy out of thin air with 1,000 clones only netted about 2 miserable points a day. That was way too slow. Sure, I was a prince pulling in monthly resources, but pre-level 100 cultivation relied entirely on the Heaven Tower, meaning 0 pill stockpiles were left lying around. This month's shipment of 300 pills had already dropped. That exact batch was supposed to sustain me for 3 months. If I were normal, yet I torched through the whole thing in 6 hours. Could I seriously hit up the Star Lord for a restock? How would I even justify that? Hey, I accidentally cleared 3 months of supply in a single afternoon, can I get some more? He'd obviously want answers. Inevitably, I'd have to spill the beans about the clones, all 1,000 of them, and how I broke the system using a bug by exploiting dual rift rewards. No shot doing that would completely blow my cover, and getting exposed meant a swift death. Motionless by the window, I stood there deep in thought. Out in the courtyard, the maids were already low-key gossiping about my god-tier flex. The blinding flash of my awakening had literally lit up the entire palace. That massive pillar of light had been fully visible across the whole estate. With tens of thousands of people right there, royals, servants, and elite guards, there was simply no way to keep it under wraps. Keeping something that big a secret was totally impossible. Before long, every single planet without a holy light star suddenly had a god-tier prince on their radar, and I seriously needed more pills. Lady Hua's family background was way too small and weak to offer any real backup. Waiting a whole month for the next shipment was painfully slow, meaning I had to figure out another hustle. A loyal maid slipped into my room, handing over 50 divine power pills from Lady Hua herself. She had been quietly hoarding them for years, stashing away the bulk of her own monthly resources without holding anything back, and refusing to use a single one on herself. Just as long as her son kept leveling up and getting stronger. She was completely fulfilled, though 50 pills still weren't enough to max out my rank. Tracking down an independent supply became my next top priority. Being a high-profile prince made grinding for side loot way too conspicuous. But fortunately, I had 1,000 clones at my disposal. The catch was that they were all currently stationed on Origin Star, a sector mostly populated by lower-level warriors under rank 100, which meant 0 divine power pills could be found there. Deploying them to actual second-tier planets was the only way to tap into those rich resource reserves. Without hesitation, I dropped the command. 1,000 clones broke into squads of 10, scattering across 100 different worlds. Whether they had to buy pills, grind for them, trade for them, or straight-up steal them, failure wasn't an option. They completely revamped their disguises to blend in seamlessly with the locals of each realm before stepping right through the shimmering teleportation gates. They vanished into 100 distinct worlds in the blink of an eye. Not a single person batted an eye. It was like throwing 1,000 individual droplets right back into the vast ocean. Meanwhile, back at the estate, I kept a low profile locked inside my room, fully aware that the walls basically had eyes everywhere. Spies belonging to the Empress, other wives, and rival noble houses were crawling all over the place. Flaunting god-tier talent overnight had instantly painted a massive target on my back, making me public enemy #1 for anyone who preferred me breathing their dust rather than my own air. With the Empress Saint Tianjiao gunning for me, and eventually every rival planet wanting my head on a spike, playing it safe was my smartest move. Staying put, keeping quiet, and grinding out my cultivation whenever fresh pills rolled in was the meta. Speaking of the ruthless Empress, her wheels were already spinning with shady plots. Having caught wind that the Emperor had gifted me 300 pills, while her own golden child, Saint Tianjiao, only pulled in 100, she saw right through the political game. The Emperor was on the verge of naming me his official heir, which meant her own flesh, and blood was getting sidelined. Summoning Saint Tianjai straight into her chambers, she demanded answers, and he confessed that my single punch had completely leveled him during sparring. Zero comfort came from her lips, a freezing smirk crossed her face instead as she declared being strong as clutch. Because an easy win would make finishing him off way too boring, her game plan was low-key genius broadcast my god-tier talent. Across all the surrounding planets, thousands of eyewitnesses watched the massive awakening ceremony go down, complete with a glowing pillar of light that lit up the entire palace skyline. That massive secret was already slipping out once rival planets got the confirmation they needed. They would show up to take me out themselves. She schooled Saint Tianjia on how palace life really works, arguing it was never about flexing raw strength or having insane talent. It was all about outlasting everybody else as the final survivor. Meanwhile, scattered across 100 different worlds, my clones were already grinding hard for rare divine power pills ready to channel them back via soul storage, while I stayed chilling in a dead prince's private suite, munching on his mom's homemade pastries while wearing his exact face, pulling off the ultimate undercover performance of a lifetime. My clone finally touched down on Star Planet beneath a vibrant azure sky. Stepping onto alien ground for the very first time, the local teleportation plaza felt way smaller than the one back on Origin Stars, yet it was still buzzing with an endless stream of moving warriors striding right into the biggest apothecary I could track down, known as the Star Pill Pavilion. I hit the counter to ask if they stocked divine power pills. The clerk stared at me like I had completely lost my marbles, proceeding to explain how rare divine power pills actually were to the point where even royal bloodlines and elite dynasties fell short on supply, since whatever stock existed went strictly to their top-tier prodigies. Meanwhile, everyday citizens and rogue cultivators had never even laid eyes on one in person. Purchasing them was completely out of the question, as the merchant pointed out. He had only laid eyes on a single pill throughout his entire existence a full decade ago, when the sovereign of Star Planet itself handed one over to their flagship headquarters, just to be put on display inside a locked glass showcase as a birthday present. He went on to drop some brutal truths about survival past level 100 prior to that milestone. Everyone farmed their levels effortlessly inside the Heaven Tower without ever stressing over resource shortages. Once you clear 100, though, divine power becomes the mandatory key to breaking through, making divine power pills the absolute fastest route to progress, missing those completely scraps of divine energy floating in the atmosphere, were all you could passively absorb, dragging yourself forward bit by bit, maybe scraping together 2 or 3 levels across a few centuries. Or alternatively, you could gamble your life hunting rare herbs in the wild, which beat breathing thin air, though it lagged way behind actual pills, leaving me walking away empty-handed with 0 shops or open markets around, and absolute supply shortages. Royalties and highborn noble families held a strict monopoly on divine power pills, and powerful clans, hoarding every single batch that ever hit circulation, stealing them directly from those elites, remained one viable option. Until I accidentally eavesdropped on a chat outside a tavern, where a loose crew of rogue warriors were gossiping about an upcoming royal tournament wide open to any cultivator sitting between level 100 and 105, pumping out rewards of 100 divine power pills for the grand champion, 50 for second place, and 30 for third, adding up to 100 sweet pills, which happened to be the exact stash required for my next level up. Sitting right at level 103 against a strict entry bracket of 100 to 105 meant I was totally eligible, though a sketchy-looking dude tried warning me not to bother, as he muttered that the top 10 leaderboard spots always got locked down by elite aristocrats, equipped with eternal-grade gear, wielding saint-tier cultivation arts, and snacking on divine power pills like they were candy, while solo rogue fighters only ever showed up just to get completely wrecked and humiliated. I asked him to sign me up instead. He locked eyes with me in silence for 3 whole seconds, before letting out a heavy sigh, and muttering that East City Arena registrations were shutting down that very afternoon, making me hustle over there immediately upon my arrival. I found already a massive queue of several hundred people lining up to register under a completely fake alias. I entered my name for the tournament, Lin number 317, causing the registrar to give me a brief side-eye when I claimed to be an independent warrior. Though he didn't press me with questions while killing time in line, I checked in mentally with my other clones, scattered across various planets, only to find the exact same story everywhere. Divine power pills were practically non-existent on the open market, since royal households and high-tier noble clans hoarded every single, leaving all my clones coming back completely empty-handed, making this Star Planet tournament easily the absolute best shot any of us had managed to track down, with a prize that was refreshingly straightforward. 100 divine power pills locked in for first place. That tier was already a total breeze, and 0 chance I was gonna catch an L here. My overall stat boost was sitting at a massive 46 trillion times. Those self-proclaimed prodigies barely had a modest tens of thousands or a few 100,000 times enhancement. The sheer gap was a wild tens of millions to 1. Even when factoring in that level suppression rule, which chops off 5% damage for every level gap when an opponent outranked me, the highest level difference I had ever faced was just 2 levels. At level 105, a tiny 10% reduction meant absolute squat when I was millions of times stronger than them. I managed to track down a low-key, cheap inn in the East District, charging a mere 10 divine coins a night. Flipping open my soul storage, I withdrew the cash. Shang Yuan still had over 1,000,000 divine coins safely stashed away that I kept, before I crashed onto the bed and knocked out cold. By the next morning, the grand arena was completely packed, with tens of thousands of hyped spectators totally cramming the stands. Massive banners repping all the elite noble families flew high. The Chun clan's Silver Moon alongside the O-Yang clan's Golden Phoenix, plus the Zai-Ma clan's Blue Wolf. I was chilling back in the dim corner of contestant area number 3, spot 17 right in the very last row. All the independent warriors stationed around me were frantically checking their gear and trying to hype each other up for the battles. A lanky, tall guy right next to me suddenly pressed me for my level and class build. Level 103. Health tank, I casually replied, making him eye me up and down with total skepticism, before he bluntly asked if I could even survive a single hit from the noble kids. "I'll give it a shot," I murmured. The front rows felt like an entirely different universe altogether. The rich noble heirs stood rigidly in immaculate lines, sporting high-tier eternal gear that literally gleamed under the bright morning sun. Chins held high and voices hushed, while effortlessly radiating main character confidence. Spotting the two massive frontrunners was ridiculously easy. First was Qin Tianyu, sitting proudly at level 105, decked out in striking silver-white armor, sporting a silver moon badge and a long ponytail tied neatly back, rocking a stone-cold poker face as everyone's undisputed favorite to lock down first place. Right beside him stood O-Yang Minghua at level 104, a fierce fighter wrapped in glowing light gold armor and wielding a slim sword covered in mystical runes. Her piercing gaze stayed frosty like winter ice whenever someone foolishly dared to brush her off as just a woman, prompting another nearby dude to quickly remind them how she had completely wrecked him last time. The two heavy hitters stood shoulder to shoulder at the very front edge, completely ignoring each other's existence, hanging out way back in the shadows like a total nobody. I waited for my shot to step up and flex on everyone with something they'd never seen. The tournament regulations kept things pretty straightforward. Random matchups kicked off the opening round where getting beaten meant packing your bags, while round 2 brought an all-out free-for-all where maximum victories secured the championship. Stepping up first against me was some high-tier level 104 dude hailing from the Chun family. Flexing a blazing sword, he casually advised me to forfeit right then and save myself the agony. The second the bell rang, he sprinted at maximum velocity and slashed right across my shoulder up popped the damage metrics. Proving his ultimate attack did basically zilch to me. My passive reflect ability instantly bounced the blow right back and snapped his blade in half. Total shock washed over his face as he stared at his wrecked weapon with just a single punch from me. He went flying clear across the arena, crashed hard into the barrier, and couldn't pull himself back up, announcing contestant number 317 as victor, while absolute silence fell over the crowd as round 2 kicked off with 157 intense showdowns. Every single match played out in the exact same vibe. One punch was all it took. No matter who stepped up to the plate, whether it was the Qin family or the Aoyang family, or even the Zima crew, and regardless if they were level 103, 104, or 105, it didn't change a thing about their gear or the overpowered skills they relied on. A single punch sent them flying through the air, leaving them knocked out, while I calmly strolled off the stage. 10 fights, 20, 50, 100, then 120. And they all ended the exact same way. A heavy, dead silence blanketed the entire arena, with tens of thousands of spectators frozen like statues, staring straight at me. Nobody in the audience could wrap their head around what was going down. A solo level 103 warrior carrying zero background, no prestigious family ties, and no elite gear was flat out dropping every opponent with one single hit standing on the sidelines. Chen Tianyu watched closely, his fists clenching tighter with every single match that passed. His followers whispered amongst themselves, wondering if I was pulling off some kind of banned technique. Manhwa kept her eyes on the matches too, admitting she couldn't figure me out at all. There was zero energy fluctuation and no fancy skill animations, just a pure, raw physical punch that somehow completely demolished. Eternal grade armor, bringing me to my ultimate showdown. Match number 157 against Chun Tianyu in the flesh. A tense hush fell over the packed stadium as he stepped forward, gleaming in his silver armor with an icy glare, and zero chill. He swore he had no clue where I dropped from or how my power was cracked. But backing down wasn't an option for him. Thrusting his hand upward, he triggered a blinding flash of white that completely swallowed the arena whole as the glare finally faded. He was left sinking to his knees on the concrete. His chest badly caved in and blood dripping past his lips, towering right over him. I dropped the news. You lost. Dead silence took over as tens of thousands of spectators stood frozen in shock. A noticeable tremor broke through the referee's voice, while the final outcome was being called out. Champion, number 317, racking up 157 total bouts, 157 victories, backed by exactly 157 single punches. First place was mine, along with 100 divine power pills. Every single match went my way across all 157 showdowns, 157 dubs in the bag, and every last one ended identically. One punch was all it took. After I flat-out leveled Chun Tianyu, he demanded to know my actual background. An independent warrior is what I called myself before walking away. Left standing there in pure frustration. He was literally shaking. Oh, Yang Minghua was stepping up as my final opponent. She hit differently compared to the rest of them, having closely studied all my previous fights. She knew winning was impossible, yet she insisted that going down swinging beat, never trying at all. Regret over lacking the guts was something she refused to ever look back on, throwing caution to the wind. She charged straight at me with everything. Her sword strike came in even faster than Chin Tinio's attempt, landing squarely on my chest. The blade just bounced right off. It failed to make me flinch even a little bit. Skipping any punch, I simply tapped her softly on the shoulder, a gesture so feather-light it couldn't possibly harm a fly, freezing in her tracks. She instantly caught the underlying message. Total obliteration was within my power. But I chose mercy instead somehow. That gentle restraint wounded her ego far deeper than getting blasted across the stadium would have. Promising to keep my name locked in her memory, she declared that. She totally doubted my claim of being a solo, independent warrior, before adding that my true identity honestly didn't matter, since she'd catch up to my level 1 day runner-up. Honors were claimed by Chun Tianyu. He finally realized that weapons had never been touched throughout all my 157 fights, relying strictly on bare hands, stepping away quietly. He muttered about hitting the training ground immediately. A hard lesson was learned that there is always someone bigger out there. Xing Chun, an esteemed elder presiding over the award ceremony, finally passed the jade bottle over to me, packed tightly with 100 divine power pills with eyes full of intrigue. He locked gaze with me and muttered under his breath that if I ever needed a solid favor, seeking him out at the Grand Royal Palace was the move. Stepping away, I stashed those pills securely in my soul storage and immediately dispatched clear orders to all 150 of my clones, snatching up a pill apiece. They fired up their cultivation all at once. 6 hours later, level 104 was finally unlocked. My health skyrocketed to a staggering 92,000 trillion, while my divine blood attack hit 200, and divine attack scaled up too. Thanks to the leftover pills, I still had 501 points banked toward the next level back over at the Star Planet's Royal Palace. The senior elder Xin Chun had already sent some operatives to dig into my background. They came up empty-handed because my name, identity, and overall dossier were completely fabricated with zero records existing anywhere. The investigator estimated my actual combat power sat at least around level 110, pushing way past my officially listed level 103. He strongly suspected I was packing some low-key rule-breaking abilities, smirking near the glass pane. Xing Chun murmured that it was low-key fascinating. They could keep hunting for clues, but they would never track down a thing simply because Lin Lin was never a real person to begin with. He was just one disguise out of 1,000 custom faces. And by the time they finally figured out the plot, I would already be ghosting them for good. Right before a sudden summons dragged me to the council hall, the classified tea about my god-tier talent had officially leaked everywhere. Every single second-tier planet now knew the Holy Light Star's 9th prince had somehow awakened a god-tier divine gift. Viral word of it swept across the entire star region. Overnight, the Emperor was totally losing his mind, demanding to know who leaked the intel to the public. Not a single soul confessed, resting beside him with a subtle, knowing grin. The Empress made me pretty sure she was the mastermind. Lady Hua sat quietly in the dim far corner, just as reserved as always, until I took a seat right next to her. She reached out and grabbed my hand with an ice-cold grip, softly whispering that I shouldn't stress or be scared, giving her hand a reassuring pat. I told her I was totally fine. Rising from his seat, Grand Elder Xing Xian spoke up, stating hunting down the leaker wasn't even the real priority here. Staying prepped for whatever chaos came next was what mattered. Rival planets wouldn't just sit back and idly watch Holy Light Star nurture yet another overpowered level 199 warrior. They were definitely going to try and take me out. They wouldn't dare pull any overt, open moves given that Holy Light Star held the #1 rank. But they'd definitely scheme shady ways to get to me in secret. Even right here inside the guarded palace walls, the Emperor finally dropped his verdict. Stepping outside the palace gates was officially off-limits for me. Staying put indoors to grind out my cultivation was the mandatory play for my own survival, and the long game of Holy Light Star. Shang Xian piped up, arguing that locking myself inside wasn't enough. Foreign planets might still sneak spies right past the security. He suggested deploying 24/7 armed guards around my chambers, along with a ruthless background check on every incoming servant once the assembly cleared out. The Emperor signaled me to hang back. He broke down a secondary hazard that had completely slipped my radar: arena combat star region protocols, legally permitted same-tier challenges. Anyone sitting inside my exact 10-level bracket ranging, straight from level 100 to 109, had the right to call me out. And dodging it wasn't an option. The showdown would go down on a ruthless dual platform where lethal force was completely legal. It was an absolute ironclad rule. Rival worlds could easily dispatch their elite level 109 prodigies, fully maxed out in lethal combat disciplines, to take me down in a legal deathmatch. Arena, it was basically a government-sanctioned hit job disguised as a rule. He pointed out that beyond level 100 dimensional rifts, stopped handing out free skills. Real power now demanded rigorous martial arts training, requiring countless hours of sweat and discipline. He strongly urged me to kick off combat training immediately, running it parallel to my core cultivation. I kept my cool, nodding silently while plotting in my head, armed with my absurd 46 trillion times stat boost. I was low-key untouchable against anyone under level 124, no matter what fancy moves they threw at me. Even so, keeping my cards close to my chest was best. Mastering actual combat techniques still had solid utility. Having 1,000 clones meant they could grind martial arts simultaneously. A single day of training on my end translated to over 3 years of progress for anyone else. Plus, since most of my clones were currently swarming various star systems, hunting down rare divine power pills with zero luck, they had plenty of downtime, so putting them to work made total sense, absorbing every single fighting style and weapon technique they could possibly get their hands on. Stepping out of the Grand Council chamber into the dim hall, Lady Hua was pacing back and forth with a deeply anxious expression. She spoke up, telling me not to sweat being grounded inside the palace walls. My father was merely playing it safe to protect me. I offered a soft reassurance, letting her know I wasn't bothered at all, flashing that signature crescent moon grin. She dragged me back to feast on osmanthus cake. Hardly had I swallowed my third slice when frantic footsteps suddenly echoed outside. An immediate summons was issued ordering all princes and ministers to the council hall. Upon our arrival, the Emperor stood gripping a golden letter with a grim expression. A secret realm has just unlocked. None other than the Starfall secret realm. Dead silence fell before the room went absolutely wild. This mysterious dimension only unlocks once every 100,000 years. Dating back a full 100,000 years to the time Star Planet's reigning ruler first stepped inside as a rookie prince, whatever loot he secured inside was so insane that the former Star Lord instantly named him the heir, bypassing every other prince entirely. As for the requirements, only warriors ranging from level 100 to 120 qualified to enter Holy Light Star was granted a mere 5 slots. And tomorrow's upcoming tournament would decide the top 5 travelers. Saint Tianjio volunteered right off the bat, head held high and oozing supreme confidence. The 6th prince at level 110, the 7th prince sitting at level 108, alongside the 4th princess at level 112, also stepped forward. Then the Emperor shifted his gaze toward me, his features freezing up for a brief second. Shang Yuan, you are sitting this one out. That realm is a lawless zone, drifting far away from here the second you step foot outside the palace walls. Rival planets are going to hunt you down. Just stay put and grind your cultivation. All eyes locked onto me. Saint Tianjio flashed a petty smirk while the Empress slowly sipped her tea with a subtle smile. Fine by me, I replied. I'd gladly roll with my father's decision. Murmurs immediately swept through the chamber. People were calling it a total waste for a god-tier talent to pass up a once-in-a-lifetime 100,000-year opportunity, while others argued I'd turn into a walking bulls the minute I ventured outside. Saint Tianjio tried throwing some cheap shade my way, bragging that he actually wanted to crush me in the tournament. Glancing right at him, I dropped. Wasn't that last beatdown enough? Or do you need a round 2? He clammed up instantly. A deeply mixed expression of annoyance and calculation crossed the Emperor's face as he gave me one final look. Everyone present was then dismissed with a wave of his hand. Back in my private quarters, I had to admit something. This secret realm wasn't even close to the big deal they all thought it was. Across 100 different planets, I possessed 1,000 active clones. Working tirelessly around the clock, they gathered resources and mastered advanced techniques. Blazing ahead of everyone's wildest expectations, my cultivation speed was already hundreds of times faster. Still though, a legendary realm opening only once every 100,000 years offered game-changing rewards capable of instantly crowning an heir. Walking away from an opportunity like that was low-key painful. Somehow, I just had to figure out a backdoor entry. Stepping out of the Grand Council Hall, all the princes and princesses crossed my path with entirely different vibes. Right by the doorway, Saint Tianjiao tried to flex and trash-talk me, comparing me to some pathetic rat hiding inside the palace. Meeting his gaze with total silence, that deadpan stare instantly made him flinch. The memory of our previous sparring match came rushing back. Before he could spit out another word, the Empress yanked him away. Striding over next, the sixth Prince Shang Tianmin stopped right beside me. He was an absolute giant with a massive scar stretching from his eye down to his jaw. Surprisingly, his attitude was pretty chill. He pointed out that the secret realm was a death trap anyway, and swore to bring me back a cool souvenir. Since his mom was just a regular consort like Lady Hua, there was zero bad blood between us. Then came the seventh prince, Shang Tianchi, the one with the notoriously fox-like face. Sporting a thin, cunning grin, he whispered to me that it was totally natural for my old man to lock his treasures away. With a smooth, "Take care," he slipped away like a prowling cat. The fourth princess, Shang Tiangxin, remained completely silent, fixing me with a heavy 3-second stare. Those freezing, lethal eyes were an exact replica of her mother's, the Empress herself, before she swept past. A lingering chill hung thick in the air where she had just stood. Uncle Zhang started running down everyone's power levels for me. The eldest prince sat at 118, while the second clocked in at 115. The third stood at 116, and the fifth reached 119. The sixth held at 110, with the seventh trailing at 108. Saint Tianjiao, the eighth prince, barely scraped by at 100, and the fourth princess measured at 112. Anyone sitting below 110 had practically zero chance of survival, he warned. According to the realm's brutal scaling rules, every single level of difference cost you a 5% damage reduction. With Saint Tianjiao stuck at level 100 facing off against someone at level 119, his offensive output would get slashed by a massive 95%. Sure, he might manage to get inside, but he was destined to get completely wrecked. Returning to Lady Hua's palace, the dinner table was set with standard comfort food, low-key yet packed with total love. My bowl was constantly loaded with extra helpings by her, stuffing it full of fish belly and tender ribs. A wave of nostalgia hit her next, recounting how little Shang Yuan used to obsess over fish belly meat back when he was just a kid. That specific piece was always saved for him by her, leaving the head and tail for herself to munch on. Vivid pictures of young Shang Yuan were painted, rocking a tiny ponytail while sprinting across the courtyard, acting straight up like a wild monkey with a grin. That cheerful smile vanished abruptly as she asked, "My boy, has something been weighing heavily on your mind lately?" Motionless chopsticks froze in my hand, and Shang Yuan's memories were frantically scanned by me, double-checking if any subtle slips had been made. Zero obvious screw-ups could be found anywhere. Piercing, bright eyes were fixed straight on me, carrying no judgment or low-key interrogation, just piercing right through the surface to my soul. Ever since your awakening, a total vibe shift has happened. You were always reserved, but never this low-key heavy. My utensils hit the table as direct eye contact was made, knowing concrete evidence wasn't actually in her hands, relying purely on a mother's insane intuition. "You're tripping, mother." A heavy silence stretched on for several seconds, broken by a soft smile. "Maybe I am overthinking." Her chopsticks were picked right back up, dropping another rib straight into my dish. "Eat up before it gets totally cold." A facade of total chillness was worn as I ate, while Uncle Zhang stayed locked near the doorway, posing like an unblinking stone statue the whole time. Every single word had been absorbed by him, and a barely noticeable eyebrow twitch was caught by me. 2,000 solid years had been dedicated by him to serving the royal family of Holy Light Star. Countless young princes had been guarded under his watch, giving him the skill to spot fakes instantly, distinguishing truth from lies with a single glance. That exact same weird shift hadn't escaped him either. It wasn't just standard aging happening, but an entirely different soul occupying this body. Absolute silence was maintained by him, knowing that exposing it spelled certain death for his own skin, along with the endless chaos it would trigger. Keeping his head low, he stayed frozen like a monument, while dinner wrapped up and my feet drifted back to my room. My thoughts were spinning wildly, while Lady Hua's instincts were razor-sharp. Uncle Zhao was even more perceptive, meaning I had to tread extremely lightly. A single tiny slip-up would completely shatter this whole masquerade. Staring blankly at the cracked ceiling from my bed, my mind drifted back to Lady Hua. She had definitely noticed something felt off about me. This wasn't driven by cold logic or careful observation, but purely by a mother's instinct. My disguise had easily fooled the Emperor himself, yet it completely failed against a woman who had spent 22 solid years memorizing every single little detail about her actual son. She wasn't necessarily outright suspicious, just low-key sensing that the vibe was different, sort of like staring at a familiar painting and realizing one brushstroke was totally out of place, even if you couldn't put your finger on which one. Leaving her presence right now would definitely raise red flags, and with the Emperor strictly forbidding me from stepping out of the palace, I was completely cornered. Sooner or later, she was bound to piece it all together. Shaking off that nagging anxiety, I immediately checked in with my 1,000 clones spread across hundreds of different planets. The status reports coming back were practically identical. Divine power pills were low-key impossible to get your hands on. Every single planet's royalty and elite families were hoarding them tightly, making it so ordinary folks couldn't ever buy, earn, or even lay eyes on a single one. A tiny handful of my clones had managed to sniff out minor opportunities, pulling off 119 pills at a gladiatorial arena on Cinnabist Star over the span of 3 days. But they couldn't keep fighting without blowing their cover and exposing their true strength. Other clones stumbled upon sporadic tournaments, though none of them offered anything sustainable, so I shifted my focus. The Starfall Secret Realm was the top priority on my radar now. The loot waiting inside was insane. The absolute last person who stepped foot in there ended up becoming Star Planet's heir. Breaking in was an absolute must. Holy Light Star had locked down 5 spots. The top 10 planets snagged 3 each, while planets ranked 11 through 100 only walked away with a single entry slot apiece. I immediately ordered all 1,000 clones to start digging deep to find out who claimed each planet's spots. However, because those clones were posing as total nobodies, digging up that kind of classified intel wasn't happening easily. They had only been stationed on their respective planets for 3 short days, so I decided to flex my actual prince identity instead, commanding Uncle Zhang to put together the complete master roster of every single planet's participants. He came back half a day later clutching dozens of heavy pages. Every identity, rank, along with all gear and skills, was completely mapped out. Every single competitor hailing from the top 100 planets stood proudly at level 110 or higher. Flexing eternal-grade loadouts across the board, they all packed insane triple S-tier abilities. With nobody dipping below 110, brutal level suppression mechanics rendered lower-tier fighters completely useless. Every single level gap meant a 5% drop in damage output, while a 20-level difference completely nullified all damage. Stashing the documents safely inside my soul storage, I shot the master roster over to all 1,000 clones with fresh directives. Each duplicate was handed a specific mark, tasked with stalking their target and memorizing every move, patiently waiting for the ultimate opening to strike, stripping memories bare using the eyes of rebirth, and seamlessly stepping into their shoes for days on end. To get this mission locked down, at least, one clone had to secure a golden ticket into the secret realm, even if the rest of them flat-out flatlined trying. Dispersed across 100 worlds, 1,000 copies sprang into action. Moving swiftly through the shadows, they locked down every target's turf. Pairs staked out each residence, while the remainder bought high-tier intel straight from shady brokers. The manhunt was officially live. Down on Celestial Abyss Star, sitting pretty at rank 98, one of my clones was chilling inside a sketchy tavern on the city's north side. Operating under the alias Lanimo, he masqueraded as a low-key level 104 independent mercenary. A clandestine meetup was going down with an informant, a scrawny, wiry guy wearing a battered straw hat who went by Rat. Earning his daily bread by trading secrets, the shady broker had been grinding this hustle for over a decade. Shelling out 10 divine coins, my duplicate got exactly the kind of high-value payload he was hunting for from Rat. The target in the crosshairs was Kai Yun Zio, the level 118 crown prince ruling over Celestial Abyss Star. He checked out as a primary mark on the exclusive Secret Realm list, hand-picked by the planets for the Starfall Secret Realm trial. The ultimate weak spot. His mother kicked the bucket 10 years ago and now rested deep inside a quiet hillside graveyard sitting 30 miles north of the urban sprawl. Every single year on this exact date, the royal heir hiked out there solo on foot just to pay his respects. Keeping it strictly ritualistic, no luxury carriages or flying airships were allowed, just brutal walking. Acting as some kind of heavy personal penance or deep-seated grief, he rolled with a squad of 4 level 150 elite bodyguards shadowing his every step down the open highway, with hidden sentries patrolling all along the path. Yet right at the cemetery itself, The entire security detail stayed outside the gates. Stepping in completely solo was the strict royal rule for the prince. His late mother had seriously low-key hated big crowds, so he honored that vibe even in death, spanning roughly 200 meters across. The graveyard felt compact, featuring a solitary stone monument alongside an ancient stone altar, ringed by quiet cypress trees with just one way in and one way out, with guards locked down outside and 0 souls inside. My clone thoroughly analyzed the hand-drawn layout provided by the insider. Facing level 150 guards up front was honestly wild, making a direct fight totally impossible, though he didn't need to scrap with them anyway. His only mission was slipping past into the cemetery grounds either right before or while the prince was lingering by himself. Having 0 guards inside created the ultimate golden window. Kai Yunzio sat at a terrifying level 118, backed by double S-tier blessed abilities, boasting insane attack and defense enhancements, and rocking top-tier level 119 eternal grace. Under any normal circumstances, taking him out silently and seamlessly stealing his identity would be completely out of the question given that absurd level of security. Yet tomorrow morning, for a ridiculously brief moment, he would be chilling all by his lonesome deep inside a graveyard, shrouded by dark trees, while his massive security detail waited outside. That single vulnerability was the only opening needed. And honestly, it was plenty. My clone Lin scoped out the entire cemetery turf the night prior, ultimately locking down the ultimate vantage point, a towering tree standing right next to the target gravestone, with thick branches providing prime cover to hide, and he shimmied straight up the trunk and hunkered down through the pitch-black night. Back inside the lavish palace walls, Kai Yunzio stood motionless by his tall glass window, gazing up at the glowing moon. Tomorrow marked the heavy 10-year milestone since his mother passed away. She had explicitly requested of him at the tender age of 8 to always pay his respects at her resting place strictly alone. Since she genuinely despised crowded places, he had just nodded back then without fully grasping the gravity of it. Then she tragically died, and he faithfully kept that sacred promise year after year, his loyal veteran guardian old Zio standing tall at level 170 as his absolute closest confidant, and someone his mother originally brought from her own bloodline, stepped forward to finalize the final security arrangement, featuring 150 elite guards stationed along the access road plus hidden sentries, positioned tightly every 500 meters, along with 20 battle-hardened level 130 guards, locking down the cemetery perimeter, while leaving the entire interior of the cemetery completely empty. Strictly following his mom's explicit wish, that was the code old Zio tried to pitch, adding some backup security inside before Kai and Zio abruptly shut him down. Keeping his sacred promise to her was non-negotiable. Old Zio finally backed down, just like he had on autopilot for a decade straight. Right at daybreak, rhythmic and steady footsteps echoed down the dusty trail. My clone kept eyes peeled through the foliage as Kai Yunzio casually strolled closer, decked out head to toe in dark. Sleek threads, his hair neatly pulled back and completely devoid of any insignia. He carried the absolute flex of a level 118 warrior, packing double S stats, plus absurd SS tier abilities and legendary eternal grade gear. He was totally cracked, but still not built different enough to smoke me. Coming to a halt, he locked down right at the cemetery gates. Old Zio decided to shoot his shot one last time, only for Kai and Zio to wave him off and tell him to stay put outside. That was just how things went down per the rules, pushing the rusted gate open. He stepped inside. Behind him, the heavy gate drifted shut with a soft click, and eerie, dead silence filled the interior, punctuated only by the rustling cypress branches in the breeze and golden sunbeams slicing through the canopy. A pristine white bouquet sat glistening with fresh morning dew on the stone altar. Dropping to his knees right before his mother's memorial marker, he carefully rested a shimmering silver-white hairpin onto the stone surface and began pouring his heart out to her. Your boy finally rolled up. And honestly, I've already hit level 118. Dad swears that the second I grind to level 120, he's finally going to let me command the front lines. Pressing his forehead hard against the freezing stone slab, he muttered, "Do you actually think I can pull this off, Mom?" The wind gave 0 answers, but an uninvited spectator was locked in, perched on a sturdy overhead branch just 3 meters up. My clone had been low-key camping out all night waiting for this exact vibe, striking right then and there. My clone made his move while Kai Yun Xiao was knelt low at his mother's shrine, with his forehead still glued against the icy rock face. A faint disturbance in the air gave away an incoming threat, causing his eyes to flash wide open in pure shock. Spotted a shadowy figure clad in dark gear, closing in, and reality instantly hit him like a truck. He scrambled to scream out a warning to his outer guards, but he was way too late as a brutal strike landed straight to his dome, instantly shattering his consciousness into a million pieces. His body went limp. Crashing face down directly against the base of the grave, his glazed eyes stared blankly at the engraved stone, showing initial panic, before melting into a strange, peaceful warmth, as if he was Loki-stoked to finally rest beside her. Lights out, exactly 3 seconds later, his gaze completely faded out. Every single second of his life was sucked right up by my eyes of rebirth. A massive wave of 28 years' worth of memories crashed into my head. Memories of him and his mother, his awakenings, and intense training sessions, his day-to-day routines. Literally everything the time he spent alongside his mother before her passing, when he was just 8 years old, hit me with the heaviest emotional blow after she was gone. He had pretty much stopped smiling for good. I safely tucked his physical body away into soul storage, then completely shifted my facial features to match his longer, more angular face and broader shoulders. While standing slightly taller, the silver hairpin left behind on the altar was picked up by me before striding out of the graveyard. At the front gates, old Zio bowed and muttered, "Your Highness," making my way back toward the palace with a simple nod. A squad of 4 level 150 elite guards quickly locked into formation around me. My stride maintained the exact same calm and steady rhythm Kai Yun Zio always kept, with his mother's hairpin clutched tightly in my palm. Palace servants greeted me upon arrival and served up the modest vegetarian morning meal the actual prince had requested beforehand for this specific day. After dismissing the maid, I finished the food all by myself and immediately proceeded to check his spatial ring. Tucked inside were a cool 2 million divine coins, 3 full sets of eternal grade gear scaling across levels 100, 110, and 118, alongside various crafting materials and pills, plus 6 neatly stacked bundles resting in one corner, totaling 600 divine power pills that totally left me shook. 600 total. That completely cleared up how those noble kids leveled up so ridiculously fast. They literally sit on absolute mountains of these resources. Even the crown prince, representing a tier 98 planet, had a stash of 600, simply sitting around because of his holy tier talent limitations, allowing him to digest only around 45 per month, meaning this massive surplus, just piled up over time, leveling up from 104 to 109, would take me the whole 600 pills. Normally, running solo with god-tier talent would demand 200 days, but lucky for me, I had my clones. 600 clones taking down 1 pill apiece meant the whole deal wraps up in 6 hours flat. All 600 pills were shifted straight into soul storage by me, before firing off the command for 599 clones to each pull a single pill from the inventory. After grabbing one for myself, I told them to lock down a quiet spot and jump straight into cultivation right away, while the remaining 400 clones stayed on active search duty, scoring extra pills somewhere else. That secret realm spot was totally locked down. Kai Yun Zio was officially who I became, stepping up as the crown prince of Celestial Abyss Star, with a VIP pass straight into the Starfall secret realm. Plus, in just 6 hours, I'd be hitting level 109. Meanwhile, back over on Holy Light Star, over 10,000 hyped fans packed the arena tight to catch the Grand Royal Tournament. 5 golden tickets for the Starfall secret realm were up for grabs. Even though the Emperor banned me from joining the brawl, I still rolled through just to spectate. Curiosity hit hard about how strong these royals actually were. One by one, the princes flexed and stepped into the venue, each making a whole production of it. Saint Tianjiao rolled in first, chin held high, strutting like a total peacock, while waving at his fangirls in the bleachers. Sitting at a measly level 100, everyone knew he was gonna get wrecked, though that didn't stop him from seizing any chance to show off. Right after him came the 6th Prince Shang Tian Ming, looking like an absolute beast covered in jagged scars, flexing a terrifying level 110. When Saint Tianjiao tried to play buddy-buddy with him, Tian Ming just gave him a cold, dismissive stare and dropped it straight. "You not good enough," he told Tianjiao to go grind for 2 more years if he even wanted a prayer of lasting 3 moves. Tianjiao's face flashed shades of pale and furious crimson. Then the 7th Prince Shun Tiangxin slipped through the shadows quietly with his sharp fox-like face at level 108, finding a dim corner to stand in with his eyes shut tight. Way underleveled for a win, yet he showed up anyway. The 4th Princess Shang Tiangxin arrived, and the room's vibe instantly froze over, sitting at level 112. She was a total ice queen. Not a single soul dared whisper near her perimeter. Bringing up the rear was the Crown Prince Shang Taeans, flexing a towering level 118, bypassing heavy armor for chill casual clothes, flashing a warm smile that hid completely unreadable intentions. Crowds bowed low as he sauntered past, not out of respect for his level, but because he was the heir to the throne. even though thanks to my god-tier awakening rumors were spreading fast that his crown might not stay on his head much longer alongside the second prince sitting at 115 rolling in right on schedule. The third prince showed up at 116, while the fifth secured 119. All 9 princes were accounted for, leaving literally just me missing from up in the nosebleed section. A trio of girls belonging to the Yang household were busy gossiping, dedicating a full hour to her makeup routine. Yang Qing was low-key hoping to catch a glimpse of me, while Yang Ji kept her fox-like gaze locked firmly on the doorway. Chatter buzzed about how I was practically the future of Holy Light Star, and how the Emperor was shielding me way too heavily to let me step into the ring. Then suddenly, a voice yelled out that he's here, skipping the heavy armor completely. I strolled straight into the arena. Rocking my go-to dark gold casual streetwear, competing was never the plan since I was just chilling as a spectator. Yet every single pair of eyes in that massive stadium snapped right to me stepping through the threshold in my signature dark gold casuals. I wasn't here to fight, but simply to observe the chaos unfolding. The entire venue dropped dead silent the exact millisecond I crossed the line before blowing up into pure bedlam. With a crowd of over 10,000 people chanting my name at the top of their lungs, high society girls who had spent ages perfecting their glam screamed until their vocal cords completely gave out. Hailed as a god-tier talent, the 9th prince was dubbed the undisputed future of Holy Light Star, standing out from the rest. Those 3 Yang girls were making the most noise. Apparently, Yang Qing spent a full 60 minutes getting glammed up just for a chance to catch my eye, while Yang Zai, the one sporting those sharp, fox-like eyes, kept a lower profile. Though I could easily tell she wasn't just another fangirl. She was calculating every move, strategizing how to lock down a connection with the future Star Lord over in the VIP contestant zone. Each of the princes had a totally distinct reaction to my grand entrance. Saint Tianjiao's expression, twisted into a dark shade of pure envy today, was supposed to be his ultimate moment in the spotlight instead of him. I ended up stealing every single eyeball in the house simply by walking through the door. Whereas the 6th prince, Tian Ming, burst out laughing right in Tian Jiao's face, teasing that he was just here to watch his rival get crushed. Meanwhile, the 7th prince Tianzin retained his quiet composure in the corner with his eyes shut tight, though I knew damn well he was catching every single whisper, just waiting for the political waters to get murky. The 4th princess, Tian Xin, fixed her piercing, ice-cold gaze straight on me, mirroring her mother. It felt like I could practically read her inner monologue, knowing full well that she and the Empress were going to fight tooth and nail to block me from claiming the throne out of all of them. Crown Prince Shang Tian's vibe was hands down the most intriguing. Giving my shoulder a warm pat alongside a reassuring grin, he urged me to grind hard. But the moment his back was turned, that fake grin completely vanished from his face. Having spent decades ruling supreme as the chosen heir now, my god-tier talent made all his years of sweat utterly pointless. Clenched so tight behind his back that his knuckles turned completely pale side by side. He and I stood right at the front beneath 2 massive peaks where one loomed noticeably higher than the other, making the obvious difference clear to every single spectator. From the highest throne overlooking the arena sat the Emperor, flanked tightly by a quartet of level 190 elders. Scanning each prince one by one with a sharp gaze, he let his eyes linger on the crown prince for quite a while, devoid of any paternal pride. Instead, carrying the heavy look of a father burdened by the painful realization that he had to strip away everything he once bestowed, before laying down the tournament rules with randomized matchups where winners move up and losers get eliminated, leaving only the final 5 survivors to enter the Starfall secret realm while the princes drew lots. I hung back in the shadows, observing, mentally cataloging every single detail about them, tracking their subtle movements and raw confidence, alongside vital weaknesses my clones could easily exploit later on, just as the fierce competition was about to kick off. Deep somewhere across the celestial abyss star, my clones sat comfortably inside a fallen prince's palace, having already locked down a guaranteed spot in the secret realm, while simultaneously pumping 600 divine power pills through 600 synchronized clones with arms tightly crossed and a stone-cold expression. I tracked the live fights from the sidelines of the arena floor, kickstarting round 1 with Saint Tianjiao stepping up against Crown Prince Shuntai, pitting a mere level 100 against a stacked level 118. Making the final outcome painfully obvious to everyone driven by absolute desperation to prove his worth. Tianjiao rushed forward, pouring every ounce of his power into reckless assaults, unleashing blinding sword strikes glowing with intense golden energy, blazing fast and furious. Yet Shuntai didn't even bother drawing his weapon, simply standing completely still with his hands tucked behind his back, evading every incoming blow with effortless, microscopic dodges like a gentle breeze shifting aside. before casually tapping Tianjiao just once, delivering nothing more than a light brush or a gentle pat on the back that sent Tianjiao flying all the way across the arena to violently crash into the energy barrier. 3 separate times Tianjiao hauled himself up, and 3 separate times he charged back in, only to find that Shuntai effortlessly sidestepped him and sent him blasting back across the floor, barely breaking a sweat. Dude, by the time Tianjiao's nose was smashed for the 3rd time, man, his split lips and swollen eye looked rough, while fresh blood dripped onto the stone floor. Tyrant casually strolled over and squatted down beside him, saying, "I told you to watch out and not get wrecked." Tianjiao aggressively slapped his hand away, snapping back, "You're my brother, why you gotta humiliate me like this?" For a second, Tyrant's hand froze right there in midair, before he just stood up and walked off, pausing briefly at the edge of the platform without looking back as he kept moving. As they were wheeling Tianjia past me on a stretcher, he suddenly turned his head and locked eyes with me. Through that one open eye, it was so obvious. The guy honestly thought I was loving this drama. Far from it, I literally just stood there observing quietly. Up next was match number 2, featuring the 2nd prince versus the 3rd prince. At level 115, pitted against 116, they threw down in a hard yet totally fair scrap, trading dozens of heavy blows until the 3rd prince secured the W by holding his blade right against the 2nd prince's neck. They ended up strolling off together, cracking up, with their arms thrown over each other's shoulders. Naturally, the crowd muttered that it looked way more like a casual sparring session than an actual death match. Then came the 3rd match with the 5th prince, Shang Tianfeng sitting at level 119 against the 4th princess, Shang Tianxin, who was trailing at level 112. Despite the 7-level gap, Tianxin fought fast and furious, delivering sword strikes that were razor-sharp and relentless. Still, that level difference was just too massive to beat. After barely a dozen exchanges, Tianfeng's sword was already pressed to her throat. Meanwhile, up in the stands, the Ouyang girls were busy gossiping between the fights. Ouyang Qing literally couldn't stop staring in my direction. Ouyang Zai played the mastermind role, studying me like a grandmaster analyzing a chess board, strategizing how best to position herself close to the upcoming Star Lord. Ouyang Shua was definitely the shy one of the bunch, her face flushing bright red whenever anyone even hinted at me showing up in her dreams. Throughout all of this, I kept my poker face locked down tight, strictly observing and memorizing everyone's specific combat style, their speed, raw strength, and hidden habits. Trust me, all this intel was going to come in handy later. The Crown Prince was insanely powerful, truly on another level at 118, and he hadn't even broken a sweat today. Not a single weapon was pulled out when he completely owned Tianjiao. He kept it low-key and chill without breaking a sweat. Beneath that easygoing grin lurked a vibe that was seriously freezing and ruthless. Yet not a single soul had a clue what my true identity Loki was, while everyone else was sweating bullets fighting over just 5 spots. My alternate clone, chilling on Celestial Abyss Star, had already locked one down effortlessly, and was busy stacking up on 600 divine power pills right then, and thereby leveraging 600 other side clones all at the exact same time. Everything went down precisely as predicted. For the remaining matches, power gaps were the ultimate deal-breaker that decided the outcome. Holding level 119, Power the 5th Prince Tianfeng absolutely dominated the 4th Princess Tianqi with 0 effort, standing at 119 versus 112, with a massive 7-level gap separating them. He strolled through it without even breaking a sweat. She threw everything she had into a dozen fierce exchanges, though landing a single clean hit turned out totally impossible. The moment his blade rested right against her throat, she froze entirely in place for a second with her gaze blankly staring into empty space. She was simply wired as someone utterly incapable of taking an L, especially when dropping the ball meant blowing a once-in-a-lifetime bat. A totally fair showdown went down between the 2nd and 3rd princes, ending with the 3rd prince securing the W. They strolled away side by side, acting like total besties. The remaining slots filled up in the blink of an eye, locking down the final 5 for the legendary Starfall Secret Realm. 5th Prince Tianfeng leading at level 119, Crown Prince Tai, and sitting strong at level 118, 2nd Prince Tian Wu, holding down level 115, 3rd Prince Tian Yun claiming level 116, and climbing right back up from the loser's bracket, 4th Princess Tian Xin secured her spot at level 112. Kincaid pulled off a major clutch moment to scrape on through, yet the second she made it, all that heavy pressure instantly melted off her face, while that fierce main character confidence flashed right back into her eyes. As the massive crowd started clearing out, I pivoted around and headed toward the exit. The very second I took a step, every single noble girl in the bleachers locked their eyes dead on me like I was walking main attraction. Energy, their hyped-up whispering trailed right behind me in the... Wait, he totally glanced at me. No way. He was definitely looking at me. You're both tripping big time. The Ouyang sisters were out here acting the loudest of all. Ouyang Qing loudly announced to anyone within hearing range that she was 100% gonna marry me, no cap, causing a bunch of the girls to burst out laughing at her audacity, shouting right back. She fired back. Her family stood supreme among every noble house out there, with looks that killed and skills that slayed. Her talent was unmatched. So why couldn't she land him? Silence fell as no one had a good answer, even though every single person was low-key thinking the exact same thing. Every single royal family scattered across every planet was totally gunning for the future Star-Lord, keeping her cool. Ouyang Zai stayed quiet while tracking me with those sharp, calculating fox eyes. Romance was the last thing on her mind because she was strictly plotting moves propped up on a stretcher. Saint Tianjia was being carried out in defeat. Right beside him walked the seventh Prince Tianchi, pretending to care deeply while Loki twisting the knife in his back. He casually pointed out that Tianjia had only entered just to flex, only to get totally humiliated by the crown prince. Instead, before having his entire spotlight stolen by yours truly, the moment I casually walked into the arena. Everything Tianjia pulled today was an absolute waste of time, clenched in pure rage. Tianjiao's fist tightened, making the wooden stretcher handles groan and creak. Glancing back as he walked away, Tianchi threw a look not back at Tianchi Yao, but straight at me. A flash of dark intent flickered across his eyes, vanishing instantly before anyone else could catch it, strolling right out. I didn't even bother looking back. I already secured the bag. I came for a complete breakdown of every single prince's combat style, along with their actual personalities and secret dynamics. The entire political chessboard of this royal family was an absolute mess, woven from raw jealousy, wild ambition, and deep-seated fear, all centering around one massive thing: my god-tier talent. While their eyes were entirely locked onto me, my clone over on Celestial Abyss Star was steadily grinding up to level 109, powered by 600 looted divine power pills, and getting totally prepped to raid the Starfall secret realm by stealing a dead prince's slot. Once the tournament officially wrapped up, the high-class noble girls lingering in the stands still hung around, gossiping loudly about me. I could clearly hear them dreaming about being my future wife. One specific girl, Ouyang Qing, stared at my exit path with white-knuckled, clenched fists, vowing out loud that she was gonna marry the ninth prince no matter what. Keeping her thoughts to herself, her cousin Ouyang Zai stayed quiet, though I could totally sense she was cooking up a scheme of her own. Making my way through the courtyards, I headed straight to Consort Hua's palace to see the mother of this vessel. Snacks were already waiting for me when the tournament came up in our chat. My update about eighth brother getting completely wrecked dropped right after she burst out laughing, totally convinced he had it coming. Her vibe shifted into something way more serious right after a quick question dropped from her about big brother reaching out to me. My reply mentioned his offer to help me out whenever needed. She immediately dropped a warning on me regarding him, pointing out how his friendly exterior is totally low-key, deceiving, since no one has a clue what's actually going on inside his head. Her advice was to just nod along and listen, while making sure not to take his words seriously at all. A quick nod let her know I got the message loud and clear. After saying my goodbyes, I headed straight back to grinding my training. Right before dawn, 3 days later, things started moving as the palace gates swung wide open for everyone, featuring big brother Tian Foam, the crown prince Tian Su, and third brother Tian Wu alongside fourth brother Tian Yun and fifth sister Tian Xian stepping up, all gathered tightly together in the main square, fully geared up to dive into the Starfall secret realm. Eighth brother Tian Jiao was hanging out somewhere in the crowd, stuck seeing them off, with a face that was still visibly bruised and swollen, looking super bitter about the whole deal. Father showed up, accompanied by 4 elite elders sitting at level 190. His voice boomed out with a clear reminder, since the secret realm only unlocks once every 10,000 years. Staying alive is key, meaning survival takes total priority over hunting any rewards. He specifically tasked the crown prince with watching over the rest and making sure the squad stays tight and united. Before long, he noticed my absence and asked where I was. An elder stepped in to explain the situation, highlighting how I was locked into a critical breakthrough phase. Father gave a simple nod, confirming it was definitely the right call, because letting a god-level talent go to waste makes zero sense. Stepping right onto the teleportation array together, the 5 of them flashed out of sight in a split second. Meanwhile, over on Tianyuan Star, I was standing solo right in front of a completely separate teleportation setup. My actual level had already broken through to 109 3 days ago. My stat sheet was looking stacked with 501 out of 1,000 divine power, carrying a massive health pool of 115 billion, scaling up through gear, alongside a solid 250 divine attack output. A quick warning to stay sharp came from Jalbo. Giving a quick nod, I stepped straight into the glowing light. My arrival landed me right inside the Starfall secret realm, situated deep within the ownerless star region. The dark purple sky loomed overhead, looking like a massive bruised canvas, while the ground beneath my boots was charred completely black. Shadowy mountain ranges stretched out far away in the distance. Looking so pitch black they seemed to swallow the light whole. A heavy scent of sulfur hung thick and suffocating in the air. The heavy scent of blood and rotting flowers hung in the air. Already gathered at the entrance were over 100 players. Factions from Star Chan Tai Chu and Dark Abyss, along with Chaos Star, were totally repping their own cliques. Our siblings were corralled together by the Crown Prince, as they low-key scoped out every single rival in sight. Third brother whispered that the crowd was massive. Fourth brother nodded in agreement, pointing out the head count topped 100. Hanging back in the rear of the mob was my clone Lin Mo. Slumped against the cold mountain wall, with his arms locked, Zio Bo stood right next to me, locked in place like a statue. He let me know that crossing into the secret realm alongside me wasn't allowed. Then he dropped a heavy vibe that totally threw me off, having stuck by my side for 28 years, since the day I popped into the world. He had watched me mature, unlock my hidden powers, and finally step up as Crown Prince. He confessed he had never asked for a damn thing in his life, yet here he was pleading for just one favor from me. Now play it safe and make it back in one piece. After staring at his weathered face for a solid 3 seconds, I told him got it. Causing him to crack a smile, striding up to the entrance came a white-haired elder, sporting a level 200 badge on his chest. He was clearly an official from the Star Region Alliance. He wasted no time laying down the law. Only fighters sitting below level 120 were permitted inside the domain. Once you crossed that threshold, survival became a total gamble, with zero interference coming from anyone outside, staying open for a strict window of 7 days. The realm would then shut down and automatically spit out any poor souls still breathing inside. Spawned monsters scaled upward starting right at level 120, while their ceiling tier remained an absolute mystery. Roughly 7 or 8 out of every 10 challengers brave enough to enter never see the light of day again. He warned before asking if anyone wanted out. Absolute silence met his call as he finally unsealed the gate. Blinding purple energy burst forward like a raging tidal wave, revealing nothing beyond the threshold except a swirling violet abyss devoid of any floor, bounds, or limits, intertwined with deadly star chains. Making the first move were the vanguard troops, led by Shun Ting Wang, ranked number 1, wielding 19 dual SSS tier talents, and fully kitted out in eternal grade gear. He marched right through without a single backward glance, with his 2 brothers trailing closely behind him, quickly followed by the entire squad from Tai Chu stars, and soon after, the factions of Dark Abyss stars and Yangya clothed in dark armor, moving like a shadow come to life. Total chaos erupted right then as Hun Dan Yang lost his mind, laughing maniacally, screaming at the top of his lungs. While charging forward, the Crown Prince just stood there watching every last one of them leave. Third brother piped up, demanding to know when they were finally heading, and no need to rush, was the Crown Prince's chill reply, with 7 whole days on the clock. Absolutely nobody needed to sweat it. Lingering a few minutes back, Fifth sister held her ground near the rear, clutching the hilt of her sword so fiercely that her knuckles turned completely ghost white, keeping her composure entirely. She masked her inner tension like a pro. Flashing his trademark carefree grin, second brother led the charge right inside, following right behind. The Crown Prince escorted the rest of the crew through. Holding back at the very tail end was me. My planet standing was dead last anyway, so taking up the rear while waiting was just standard protocol. One single thought echoed in my mind during that wait inside this realm: every single person is a threat. Not just beasts. Monsters aren't your only problem. Rivals from foreign worlds wouldn't hesitate to slit throats, either all for gear and mystic pills, rare resources, plus thinning out the competition for the ultimate jackpot. Rules and laws simply don't exist here. Morality is dead, leaving only the brutal law of the jungle, where the strong devour the weak. Drawing in a deep breath, I finally stepped straight into the blinding light. That eerie purple haze quickly dissolved away the second my boots slammed onto solid stone. A wall of deafening noise crashed over me. Upwards of 100 competitors were crammed together onto a massive circular stone platform spanning at least 500 meters wide, paved entirely with dark stone tiles, and intricately etched with glowing purple runes. Pulsing rhythmically like a beating heart, stretching out right beneath the platform, was a vast wasteland, scorched pitch black and extending as far as human eyes could possibly see. Swarming across that desolate wasteland were thousands upon thousands of foul beasts. Narrowing my eyes, I realized they were nightmare monsters, vicious dark-scaled demon lizards. Every single beast towered well over 3 meters in height, armored in thick black scales, with massive muscular limbs, reptilian jaws, crammed full of razor-sharp fangs and blood-red eyes glistening like sinister ghost fires underneath the gloomy purple sky. Thousands of them standing at level 1, with 21 billion divine blood points, packing 100 million divine attack stats, along with venom spit and group roar capabilities. Unleashing devastating area attacks, I quickly crunched the stats in my head, comparing them against my staggering pool of 115 trillion billion divine blood. Even if every single one of them rushed me simultaneously, I'd totally style on them, yet flexing my real power right now made zero sense. Whether anyone here could actually make it out in one piece, and run their mouths was still up in the air. If I went all out and exposed my true strength, every single witness would have to be silenced. Should anyone manage to escape alive, they'd realize the Tianhuan star's crown prince was a total fraud, and based on my fighting style alone, they might even put 2 and 2 together and figure out Su Lin wasn't actually dead, so keeping a low profile was the play for now. A paper-pale, skinny dude standing right beside me leaned forward to peer below with eyes full of dread. He blurted out how a mere 100 souls were supposed to take on thousands of level 120 beasts. Radio silence hit the group crouched on the dirt with his head buried in his arms. A heavy-set guy kept muttering under his breath that he didn't want to bite the dust. Some flashily dressed youth in gold armor marched over and planted a boot in his side, snapping at him to stop acting like such a total wimp. Glancing up with bloodshot eyes, the heavy-set guy shot back looking like a clown beats being dead. Any day of the week, I hung back in the rear with my arms tightly crossed, keeping completely mum while simply observing the platform, the barren wasteland, the ferocious beasts, and every panicked soul surrounding me. Over on the opposite side of the platform, the crown prince stood draped in a deep, dark gold robe with his hands locked behind his back, flashing that same polite yet chilling smile. Though his gaze never stopped sweeping across the wasteland, the monsters, and the crowd. Third brother sauntered over to my position and muttered under his breath that these monstrosities were no walk in the park. The crown prince simply grunted a casual yeah. More than 100 people were crammed tight onto that stone stage, packed like dumplings tossed into a boiling wok. Some huddled in deep squats, while others stood rigidly. A few dared to peek over the precipice, only to jerk their heads right back in pure terror. A guy decked out in gray armor swallowed hard and noted aloud that each of us would have to clear dozens of those elite freaks. Someone nearby chimed in to ask his level. Upon hearing he was level 112, another player quickly broke the bad news. At level 112, going toe-to-toe with level 120 threats, his damage output would tank by 40%, meaning he'd barely leave a scratch while getting one shot in a single bite. That brutal reality check shut the gray-armored guy up instantly. That same heavyset guy from earlier retreated back to the ledge to curl up, clutching his head defensively, as he obsessively counted down every single agonizing second until the realm finally shut. I locked eyes on the heavy hitters from every planet, watching them size up the chaotic mess below. Chun Tian Guang from Star Chun stood right dead center with his arms tightly crossed, glaring down. Loki pissed at the monsters beneath him. His brother, Chun Tianyu, pointed out that those creepy lizards weren't just wandering randomly, since they were lined up like a legit military squad with the massive ones up front. He muttered that some big bad was calling the shots, probably a boss. Tai Chu from Tai Chu Star held his ground at the edge, giving off total scholar vibes, though his gaze was frosty as winter. His guy Tai Su suggested drawing the beasts out in tiny little waves rather than tackling the whole horde head-on. Yet when Tai Chu asked who would step up to act as bait, complete silence hit the room. Whoever took that bait was practically signing their own death warrant. Meanwhile, Yangya from Dark Abyss Star lurked deep in the shadows, eyeing everybody like a hawk. His brother whispered that no one was making a single move, since everyone was just waiting for someone else to break the ice. Yangya let out a cold laugh, saying, "Bet, let's see who loses their patience first." Han Danyong from Chaos Star squatted right down on the dirt, lazy tracing circles with a stray rock. Looking completely unfazed, this guy was asked if he wasn't stressed, to which he replied that freaking out changes nothing, so someone would eventually step into the ring. The Crown Prince stood tall on the northern side of the platform, flashing that signature smooth smile of his, while his eyes calculated every single detail, everyone's power levels and the exact count of monsters. Wondering how we were gonna make it out alive, the third brother asked if we ought to make the opening strike. The Crown Prince shot that down, pointing out that Chun Ting, Wang Tai Chu, and Yin Yang were all frozen in different directions, each waiting for a slip-up. "Whoever blinks first loses," he noted, "so we sit tight until someone cracks." That was when the fourth brother chimed in, claiming there was a weirdo acting super sus, and he gestured toward the far back corner of the platform. That weirdo was me, specifically my clone Lin Mo, rearing back against the wall with my arms folded, eyes shut tight and looking effortlessly chill. While everyone around me was sweating bullets and pacing frantically. Muttering under their breath, I didn't even budge an inch. My breathing stayed calm and collected while my pulse remained totally chill. For 3 long seconds, the Crown Prince locked his gaze right on me. Uttering my designation, he declared me Kai Yunzio. Standing as the Crown Prince of Tianyuan, he held a star level of 1. Flexing a total of 18 dual SSS abilities, he was an absolute beast. Calling me a real player, he dropped that bombshell. Instantly, Fourth Brother's eyes narrowed into fierce slits. As panic kept spreading like wildfire, a guy rocking gray armor leaped up. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he demanded a way out. Someone grabbed hold of him to shut him down. Stepping into the wasteland below meant pure, guaranteed suicide. Breaking free from the grip, he squatted down and began sobbing uncontrollably. The chubby guy started his countdown chant all over again. Suddenly, a young man clad in gold armor delivered a harsh kick to him. Threatening to hurl him right off the edge of the platform, he glared down. Jin Buwen was identified as that gold-armored warrior. Towering in height and built like a tank, he stood at level 115. Though he gave off total brute vibes, his eyes cut like glass. Demanding that everyone chill out, he raised his voice. Freaking out like that would only get you wiped out faster. Pivoting toward the Crown Prince next, he addressed him. Urging him to drop some wisdom, he waited for a response. The Crown Prince finally broke his silence. Pointing out the threat, he noted these monsters hit level 120. Numbered in the thousands, they surrounded the area. Meanwhile, our squad barely topped 100 people. Our highest level maxed out at a meager 119. Taking them on solo spelled absolute disaster. Teamwork, however, might just give us a fighting chance. Laying out the strategy, he proposed pulling the monsters in waves. Taking them down group by group was the key. Allowing them to all charge at once had to be prevented. Jin Baohan immediately nodded in solid agreement. Others quickly chimed in with their approval too. Cutting through the chatter, Yangya's icy voice drifted from the shadows. Challenging the group, he asked who would handle the pulling. Dead silence instantly choked the entire platform. Every single person knew that whoever played bait was walking into a death trap. One tiny slip-up would seal your fate for good. As absolute quiet hung in the air, the Crown Prince scanned the crowd. Resting his eyes briefly on Jin Buwen, he moved on. Glancing over a few other royal factions next, he waited. Not a single soul dared to meet his eyes. Sweeping his gaze across everyone present, the Crown Prince looked around. Silence remained unbroken. Representatives from the top 10 planets had formed tight cliques. Meanwhile, everyone representing planets ranked 11 through 100 stood isolated. It was one lonely planet per individual. Each lonely soul stood out as totally vulnerable. Yes, that voice echoed quietly out of his own shadow once more. With a vibe cut right through like a knife, the voice demanded to know if everyone was just gonna chicken out. Jin Buwen suddenly snapped at the crowd, demanding if we were seriously planning to sit around and wait for death. Hunched low against the stone floor, a player decked out in blue armor argued back that he wasn't moving because it was total suicide. Jin Bohan fired right back that staying put was a one-way ticket to the graveyard too. The guy mumbled that at least he'd buy himself a bit more time. Jin Bohan tried to drag Shan Ting Wang into the argument, pointing out that, as a level 119 Starchin leader, he needed to step up. Chin Ting Wang just gave him a sideways glance as if he were swatting away an annoying fly, then snarked back about what he was supposed to say. Jin Buwen's face flushed a furious, boiling red. Stepping into the silence, Tai Chu spoke up, declaring that if nobody stepped up to bait the monsters, we were all gonna get wiped out right here. The beasts weren't moving yet, but that definitely didn't mean they'd stay parked. Once that stampede hit, it was game over for everyone. Glancing over at Chun Ting Guang, Yangya, and the Crown Prince, he pointed out that none of them were volunteering either. The tension in the air grew heavier by the second. Stepping forward, Third Brother volunteered to draw the monsters out solo. The Crown Prince immediately told him to shut his trap. Chun Tian, you leaned in to whisper to Chun Ting Wang that if this kept dragging on, the whole crew was gonna implode long before the monsters even made a move. Chun Ting Wang knew it was true, but he couldn't throw himself into the fire. As a level 119 Starchin Royal boasting dual SSS tier abilities, he was the future of his entire planet and couldn't risk those stakes. Naturally, nobody else wanted to take the fall either. Breaking the silence, the Crown Prince spoke up, dropping a single icy word, drawing lots. Everyone stared as his polite smile vanished, completely replaced by a chilling expression. He repeated himself, telling them to draw lots, and whoever pulled the short straw was heading out. Jin Buwen jumped on board instantly, calling it totally fair. The other leaders stood there weighing their options carefully. knowing there was a real chance their own name would get pulled, though they might dodge it if luck held out. Just as the Crown Prince was about to get things moving, Tai Chu cut in, announcing that drawing lots was cool and all, but players representing the top 10 planets were sitting this one out. An absolute dead silence fell across the platform. Jean Bohan's face flared red again as he demanded to know why. Locking eyes with him through a freezing gaze, Tai Chu replied, "Because we're literally top-tier planets. You know, and any single word dropped by us after heading out from here could completely obliterate your whole world, no cap." Not a single soul dared to move or even breathe, desperation written all over his face. Jean Bowen glanced at Chun Ting Wang for a lifeline. Total silence. Then he shifted his gaze toward Nyangya, whose features were completely swallowed up by the heavy shadows. With an unreadable, stone-cold expression, he checked out the Crown Prince. Jean Bohan's knuckles turned completely white from clenching. He was dying to speak his mind, but he eventually caved, dropped his head low, and muttered a quiet "fine." That single word was barely forced past his lips, shifting his focus to the delegates from the lower-tier planets. Tai Chu demanded to know if anyone had any objections. Some delegates kept their gazes locked downward, others were grinding their teeth in pure frustration, eyes burning red with anger. Yet absolute quiet filled the room. What else could they possibly do? Speak up and say no, only to watch their entire civilization get wiped off the map, letting a heavy 5-second silence hang in the air. Tai Chu waited it out. Since no one dared to object, he declared case closed, pivoted on his heel, and went right back to staring blankly at the desolate wasteland, acting like nothing out of the ordinary just happened, observing the whole spectacle in total silence. The Crown Prince didn't flinch. He had already seen this exact outcome coming from a mile away. Those elite planets never let their own people take any actual risks. The ones always thrown under the bus are the underdogs at the bottom, hauling a stone container right into the middle of the platform. Someone placed it down with heavy thuds. Inside sat a collection of pebbles marked with distinct digits. One by one, the representatives from the non-elite world stepped up to draw with trembling hands, clenched jaws, and tightly shut eyes, leaning my back against the cold wall. I stood way in the back, just taking it all in, since my world was sitting at a grim 98th place, meaning I had no choice but to participate in this messed-up draw, staring hard at that jar while thinking how many of these poor folks are they actually gonna feed to the monsters? A handful, maybe a couple dozen tops. And then what happens next? Some get slaughtered, so they just ship in the next wave until even more drop. Drawing numbers 1 through 10 means you're up first as bait, while everyone else stays back as standby backups. As the lottery finally kicked off, a guy clutched that stone jar like it was a live grenade, packed tightly. Within were 90 tokens, numbered sequentially from 1 to 91, for every single world outside the upper echelon. Pull a digit between 1 and 10, and boom, you're heading out in wave 1. As each person drops, the next digit steps up to take their place. Fall and substitute, until every single beast gets lured out, or the whole group is wiped out completely. Stepping up first, Jean Bowen squeezed his eyes shut right before my gaze as he reached into the pouch to grab a stone, reaching in to fish out a heavy token slowly. His fingers uncurled to reveal the result. Number 3, kicking off the first batch, all color drained from his face, while his hand kept trembling uncontrollably. Drawing number 6 next was a kid wrapped in dusty gray-white armor, part of the opening wave. Keeping completely silent, he just slumped against the cold wall with his head hung low. Then stepped up a battle-scarred guy known as Luteniu, hailing from a lower-tier world way down in the 90s, rank, clad in battered dark red armor, sitting firmly at level 117. Pulling number 1 right off the bat, he became the absolute first man up to head out. Clutching the stone so tight his knuckles turned completely ghost-white, he drifted off to the side, dropped down onto the dirt, and casually bit into a dry ration of bread. Someone hollered out, asking if he had zero fear. "Yeah," was his blunt reply, prompting them to ask how he could even stomach food. Right then, he muttered that he just wanted a full stomach before facing his doom out there. While I pulled number 35 for myself, that number meant a brutal 25 lives had to perish before my own turn arrived. As I gazed out across the endless swarm of monsters roaming the barren wasteland, losing 25 people felt like a safe bet, meaning I was practically guaranteed to get dragged out there to play bait for the horde as well. Around me, the rest kept drawing their fates, some turning ghost pale, while others had their knees buckle completely. A bitter, twisted grin crossed the face of the poor sap who pulled number 2, looking way more tragic than actual tears. And inside 15 flat minutes, all 90 tokens were drawn, and the initial group of 10 was locked in. Tears started streaming down the face of the heavyset guy who drew number 5. A silent, suffocated breakdown, letting out a choked-up noise that sounded eerily like a beast heading to slaughter. Huddled low on the rocky ground and shivering violently, He kept repeating like a mantra that he refused to die here, the short fellow right beside him. Vibe checked the room to offer some words of comfort, but couldn't muster a single syllable since his own teeth were chattering too hard. While the tall, lanky dude pressed his back against the masonry with eyes slammed shut, muttering under his breath, caught between a frantic prayer and a final goodbye to his folks back home, breaking the tense silence, Jean Bohan spoke up, dropping the reality check that nobody was actually destined to die. Since the mission was purely about luring the creatures back safely, the Crown Prince meanwhile, the rest would just be posted up on the platform waiting to throw down. Hustle hard, outrun the pack, and you might actually survive this mess. Finishing the last bite of his bread, Lutini rose to his feet, brushed off his palms, and unholstered a crimson blade, ignoring Jean Bohan completely. He locked his gaze on the beasts and dropped a cold line, since Jean Bohan's monologue is finally over. Let's get this show on the road. Early death, early peace. Striding over to the platform's ledge, he hit the brakes and stopped. Whirling around, he swept his eyes across the Supreme Planet leaders one by one. Shun Ting Wang, Tai Chu, Yang Yahan, and Dan Yang. The Crown Prince caught his eye, completely devoid of any emotion, zero hate, zero salt. Just pure dead silence like glassy water. He muttered a final request to pack their bodies back if things go sideways and they bite the dust. Making sure those monsters don't use them as a snack with a quick pivot, he took a leap of faith. Off the platform, diving headfirst as the absolute first man down. Clenching his jaw tight, Jean Bohan launched himself right after. Right behind him came the short dude as number 2. The guy in the ash-gray armor secured the 3rd spot, and the heavier guy hit 4th in line. One after another, all 10 dropped hard onto the baked, scorched wasteland. The ground was literally baking hot, smoking up against the soles of their boots. Glancing down briefly at his feet, Jean Bohan shook it off and snapped his eyes back to the 3,000 beasts lined up like a menacing wall of glowing red eyes, holding his blade horizontally across his chest. Lutinius stood front and center. Without even turning his head, he threw out a question about their game plan, stepping up right beside him. Jean Bohan suggested shying a rock at one first to test the waters and see how they vibe back. Hurling a stone straight at the nearest target, a dark-scaled demon lizard, Jean Bohan landed a solid thud right on its skull. Freezing dead in its tracks, the creature snapped its blood-red eyes onto him and let out a shrieking sound like metal scraping glass. That broke the dam for a whole row, bypassing solo warnings, as a dozen or more stampeded forward at once, scurrying frantically on all fours, their obsidian scales flashing as drool dripped heavy from their fangs, bellowing for everyone to scatter. Lutinius took off running at a full sprint. Hot on his heels was Jean Bohan, chest pounding wildly, while the short guy lagged behind as the 3rd runner, constantly glancing backward despite Jean Bohan screaming at him to keep his eyes ahead. Suddenly, a lizard snapped its jaws wide open and unleashed a laser-like beam of purple energy straight ahead, diving headfirst into the dirt. The short guy barely dodged it, blasting into the ground. The impact carved out a massive crater. Hauling him back up by the collar, Jean Bohan kept them sprinting 50 meters behind them, ticking down to 40 and 30. The heavy breathing of the beasts echoed loudly down from the platform, sounding like giant bellows, firing another purple beam right after. This one caught the heavyset guy dead in the back, sending him flying forward to skid across the rough terrain, his armor shattered to pieces, leaving his flesh completely ripped to the bone. Letting out a piercing scream, he reached his hand toward the others, desperately pleading for a lifeline, halting in his tracks. Jean Bohan fought the urge to rush back. Gripping his arm like a vice, Lutinio held him in place and yelled that the heavy guy was already a goner, pushing forward as they kept running behind them. The largest lizard clamped its jaws straight onto the fallen guy's leg. A sickening bone snap echoed out, followed by total silence, tears streaming down his face like crazy. Jean Bohan kept bolting. 80 meters left to the platform, dropping fast to 60, then 40. The Crown Prince came into view, standing right at the edge with his hands clasped casually behind his back, that same unsettling, gentle smile plastered on his face. All the elite planet leaders lined up right there, glancing down like they were watching a movie premiere, screaming at the top of his lungs. Jean Bohan warned them that the monsters were right on their heels. Silence met his warning, though everyone instantly locked in. Flashing a glowing silver blade, Chun Ting Guang drew his weapon, whipping out a swirling, energy-charged mini-mirror. Tai Chu stood ready, while Yang Yang completely vanished into his own shadow, lifting both hands high. Han Dan Yang conjured a blazing red-black orb spinning above his head to mimic a miniature sun. Hoisting his heavy axe up, 3rd brother got set, gripping his slender sword tightly. 4th brother prepared, unleashing her blade with a flash. 5th sister stepped forward, finally slamming onto the platform. Jean Bohan felt his exhausted legs practically give out. Reaching upward in desperation, third brother caught his wrist and hoisted him straight up as if he weighed nothing at all, leaping 3 meters straight into the air. Lutini cleared it solo, landing clean, while the guy in gray white armor had lost his shoes during the frantic sprint and scrambled up the edge on bleeding feet, making it across with a fractured arm. The short guy arrived with jagged white bone sticking right through his skin, dark droplets splattered relentlessly against the aged stone floor. Trembling uncontrollably, he couldn't even muster a single scream. Two had already fallen, and the chubby guy was completely gone. Encased in weather-beaten gray armor, a baby-faced kid, barely past 20, stood completely shook, stretching his arms toward the platform while sobbing openly. He begged anyone within earshot to save his life. A vicious purple blast slammed square into his spine, sending him careening through the air like a snapped kite, motionless. He lay the moment his body hit the ground. The swarming pack of a dozen lizards finally reached the platform base. Shun Ting Wang immediately barked the order to attack. Over 100 fighters stood facing a mere dozen beasts, roughly 8 or 9 on each lizard. So finish this fast. With a blinding flash of his silver blade, the lead lizard's head was cleanly severed from its body. Foul black blood geysered 3 meters high into the air, leaping down into the fray. Third brother smashed open a skull with a heavy axe blow, driving his weapon straight through one beast's eye socket. Fourth brother watched the sharp blade emerge from its skull back, chopping off the front legs of another monster. Fifth sister then violently thrust her sword deep into its throat. Every single member who hadn't taken part in the baiting pounced downward to completely overwhelm the creatures in under 5 minutes. All 12 beasts were wiped out. An eerie silence fell over the platform, gasping for air. Jin Buwen collapsed near the outer edge, clutching his fractured arm. The short guy sat silently while tears streamed down his face without a sound. The guy in grayish-white armor stared blankly at his bloody toes, absent-mindedly picking at the dirt trapped within stone cracks, standing right at the precipice. Lutinio repeatedly drew his blade and slid it back into its sheath. Not a single person dared to speak. Stepping back to the very center of the platform, the Crown Prince scanned the survivors and delivered 3 words: solid, luring work. Absolutely effortless. Lifting his gaze, Jin Baohen looked right at him. Refusing to meet his eyes, the Crown Prince looked away, turning his attention to the rest of the group. He announced, since 2 people have officially bit the dust, numbers 11 and 12 need to step up immediately and report to the luring squad for the upcoming wave. Dead silence gripped the platform as numbers 11 and 12 were called after roughly 10 agonizing seconds. A scrawny guy in gray robes, along with a massive dude clad in heavy green armor, stepped forward with pale faces and shaking limbs. Burying his face in his hands, Jin Buwen sat completely paralyzed, his mind completely consumed by thoughts of home. He was stamped as number 3. With absolutely no escape left, I casually braced my back against the rear wall, while tracking the whole scene with a totally deadpan look. Math was running in my head. I was sitting at number 35 precisely. 25 souls had to bite the dust before my turn arrived. Given a grim pace of 2 casualties per round, that countdown was gonna fly by. So I scanned the brutal wasteland. Over 3,000 bloodthirsty monsters crawling around against barely 100 of us humans. Even if 25 unfortunate souls get wiped out while baiting them, just how many beasts would that clear out? 300, maybe 500, not even close to enough. Still, I stayed put because the time wasn't right yet. Over on the east flank, Chen Tianyu turned to his brother to ask if they ought to jump in and help with the baiting, seeing as people were dropping way too fast. Chen Ting Wang shut him up instantly with a single, icy glare down on the south side. Tai Su questioned Tai Chu about what happens once all the bait units bite the dust. Tai Chu replied that they wouldn't all perish, since the toughest survivors would keep right on pulling aggro freezing cold. Third brother challenged the Crown Prince to explain if they were seriously just going to sit back and watch these folks get slaughtered. The Crown Prince snapped back, asking if he'd rather step up and act as bait himself. Third brother clamped his hand so hard onto his axe handle that his knuckles turned ghost white. He desperately wanted to say yes, but he couldn't choke the words out because he was just as terrified. The Crown Prince told him bluntly to shut his trap if he didn't have the guts to go. Fourth brother caught sight of me again and pointed out to the Crown Prince that I was acting way too chill while everyone else was freaking out and shaking in their boots. I kept my eyes shut like I was kicking back at a movie that had 0 to do with my life. The Crown Prince muttered that maybe I was hiding an ace up my sleeve, while fourth brother kept his suspicious eyes glued right on me. Intermission was over, and the second wave lined up at the drop-off ledge. Jin Buwen, Lu Tinyu, the dude in the gray-white armor, the tall, lanky one, and the short guy nursing a shattered arm all climbed to their feet. Jin Bohen advised the short guy to sit this round out, but the injured fighter shook his head stubbornly, stating they wouldn't grant him a break unless he was cold in the ground after all. Only his arm was busted, not his legs. With a grim, twisted smirk, he swore he could still outrun trouble. The fresh recruits, numbers 11 and 12, stepped up to join them. Altogether, 10 people leaped down, marching forward toward the horde of monsters in heavy, unbroken silence, reaching the 100-meter mark. Jean Buwen and Lu Tinyu both fired rocks straight at a lizard's skull. Out of nowhere, a whole pack of dozens of beasts rushed forward, not just a casual dozen like last time, but dozens on dozens. Glancing back in pure panic, Jean Buwen felt his knees completely give out. Leading the pack from the very front was Lu Tinyu, with his heavy blade clamped tight between his teeth. That guy in the grayish-white armor sprinted barefoot across the blazing, scorched earth, his bare soles stained completely bloody, flailing his broken arms wildly. The short guy dashed alongside them, his face ghost-white from sheer agony, as they all bolted for their lives. Blam! A ruthless purple energy beam slammed square into number 10's back. He went airborne in an instant before crashing hard to the dirt. 3 vicious lizards immediately swarmed his downed body, refusing to look back. Jean Buwen kept pushing forward meanwhile. The Crown Prince locked eyes on exactly 43 monsters as they charged straight toward the elevated platform. Raising his voice, he yelled to the squad that over 100 people outnumber 43 beasts 2 or 3 against 1. So let's wipe them out fast, scrambling desperately. The survivors clawed their way onto the platform. Relying on sheer grit, Lu Tinyu hauled himself up solo, whereas Jean Buwen desperately needed third brother to haul him back up. Swollen to a violent purple, the short guy's shattered arm looked gruesome dark and rotting like a bruised eggplant. No 11 barely made it either. Taking a brutal purple blast straight to the spine armor, blasted to pieces and flesh torn wide open, he was completely paralyzed, staggering up with a jagged bone spike embedded deep in his thigh. Number 12 stood tall, tugging it out himself with a sharp grunt. He tightly bound the wound with strips of torn fabric. Number 10 never made it back alive. Peering cautiously over the platforms, Jean Buwen spotted his motionless form down below, while 3 screeching lizards trampled all over his corpse without missing a beat. The Crown Prince leaped down first into the fray and cleanly sliced off a lizard's head. The rest of the crew immediately swarmed down behind him, swinging heavy blows. Third brother crushed skulls left and right with his massive axe. Fourth brother thrust his weapon straight through glowing eyes, while fifth sister sliced off lizard limbs with ruthless efficiency, flashing his silver blade. Qin Tianwang dropped 3 beasts in rapid succession. A massive hole was blasted clean through one's chest by Tai Chu's reflective mirror, and gliding silently out of the shadows, Yangya slit a throat with surgical precision. Detonating with immense power, 100 Young's energy sphere wiped out a whole cluster surrounded on all sides. Those 43 monsters were outnumbered by over 100 fighters. In just 15 minutes, every single one of them was wiped out. Silence fell heavily once more, as another comrade was lost to the void, slumped at the ledge with dead red eyes. Jean Buwen stared blankly at the carnage, eyes burning red with suppressed tears. Deep down, he knew he'd probably meet that exact same grim fate on some lonely day ahead, wave after brutal wave of relentless luring. The metallic stench of blood grew suffocatingly thick across the platform. Human gore and foul monster fluids blended into a sick puddle. Jean Buwen was barely hanging on to life by a thread. A huge chunk of flesh had been brutally ripped out of his left shoulder. Gleaming white bone peeked right through those blood-soaked, filthy bandages. Keeping count obsessively, he knew 17 grueling rounds were down. A staggering 26 people had perished, and Lu Tinyu, designated number 1, met his end back in the 6th round. Blasted square in the back by a vicious purple beam, he stubbornly refused to drop. Instead, he spun around, yanked the blade straight out of his mouth, and screamed at everyone to get the hell out of there. Desperate to stop him, Jean Buwen tried to grab his arm, but Tinyu shoved him aside hard and charged headfirst into the lizard pack. His blade flashed 3 consecutive times, taking down one beast before the swarm completely engulfed him. A vicious lizard snapped his left arm clean off, yet he didn't let out a single peep. Swinging wildly with just his right hand, he flat-out wasted that one too. Another beast clamped down on his right leg, forcing him down onto his knees. With one final burst, he drove his blade deep into a belly, then went completely motionless, the short guy with the busted arm. He had somehow lasted all the way to the 9th round. His arm had ballooned to the terrifying thickness of a human thigh, turning a rotting, toxic purple-black. Utterly unable to run anymore, he slumped down heavily onto the dirt and told Jean Buwen not to bother coming back for him. Staying meant both of them dying. A faint, grim smile crossed his face as he begged Jean Buwen to pass along one last message to his old man. Before he could even finish his sentence, a ravenous lizard tore into his neck. The guy in the gray-white armor bit the dust during the 12th round. His feet had been rubbed raw and bleeding since the very first deployment, staining the floor with gruesome red footprints. Every single time a purple beam shattered his lower shins, he stubbornly dragged himself forward across the ground for a solid 10 meters before a second blast finally put an end to him. The tall, lanky guy met his grim fate on the 16th round. Right before taking that fatal plunge downward every time, he would quietly murmur the names of his family members. His father, his mother, his beloved wife, and his daughter. Finishing the roll call was his cue to jump. On that 16th round, however, he glanced back at Jean Buin one final time before leaping off into the abyss, wearing an expression heavy with a haunting mix of heartbreak and final goodbyes. None of them ever came back, leaving a total of 26 dead, and fewer than 600 monsters cleared out so far. With 24 still left on the clock at this rate, every single person would be wiped out before the monsters even ran low. Casting his gaze upward, Jean Buin eyed the top planet leaders. Shun Ting Wang sat gripping his sword, eyes shut tight as if he were catching some Z's. Staring out at the wasteland with a deadpan expression, Tai Chu sat frozen, while Yangya blended right into the shadows. Squatting down in the dirt, Hun Dun Yang casually drew random circles on the ground. Up at the very front stood the crown prince draped in a dark gold robe, hands clasped tightly behind his back, flaunting that same fake, chill smile plastered across his face. Not a single one of them was stressing, and why would they, since it wasn't their people taking the hits? Breaking the silence, the crown prince finally spoke up. Down 2 more numbers in the 17th round, he called out for 35 and 36 to step forward. Lifting my gaze to lock eyes with the crown prince, I kept quiet, ignoring whatever he had to say. Designated as number 35, I stubbornly refused to budge an inch. Instantly, all eyes turned to glare at me. Keeping a hawk-like watch on me was Jean Buin, who had been tracking my moves the entire time, noticing how I had simply chilled against the wall from the absolute beginning, maintaining total chill vibes while everyone else was low-key freaking out. Fully aware of my undercover persona, I was Kai Yun Zio, Crown Prince of Tianyuan, ranking at star rank 98 level 1, packing a total of 18 dual SSS abilities. Even with all that heavy intel, he still couldn't wrap his head around why I was this unfazed. As he later put it, I looked like I was just waiting around for a bus. Demanding to know if I heard him, the Crown Prince repeated his order. Dropping my arms at last, I shifted my weight, squared my shoulders, and started making my way forward. Keeping a steady stride that was neither rushed nor dragging, I sliced right through the crowd until I came to a dead stop right in front of the Crown Prince. Exchanging a cold look, he pointed out that I was batch 18, number 35, and rudely asked if there was a problem. Breezing past him, I tossed out a casual no problem, light as air, while Jean Buin hovered nearby, scanning my face for any hint of emotion, finding zero fear, zero panic. Zero rush, absolutely nothing. Recalling how his own number had nearly made his legs give out on him back then, he watched in disbelief as I stood my ground, acting like I was just standing in a routine queue for something mundane. Commanding batch 18 to assemble, the Crown Prince's voice echoed out, causing the 10 of us to line up neatly at the edge of the platform. He wanted to know if everyone was good to go. Silence met his question, while 5 agonizing seconds ticked by before he bluntly announced that since nobody spoke up, the operation was officially underway. As 10 of us lined the platforms, Jean Buin kept his eyes locked right on me, not looking terrified at all, just low-key fascinated. He honestly couldn't wrap his head around why I acted like I was just hitting up a local farmer's market, instead of heading straight to our doom. One by one, they dropped down, leaving me to take the rear while my dark jacket billowed wildly in the fierce gale. As I marched forward, without ever glancing back roughly 200 meters away from the lizard beasts, the entire squad suddenly froze. That scrawny dude draped in a gray robe was trembling so violently, he nearly dropped his heavy stone. Meanwhile, the hefty guy wearing green armor kept swallowing so hard and loud, it echoed like a war drum. 9 of them were shaking like leaves, though I stayed totally chill. The gray-robed guy finally mustered the nerve to ask if I wasn't even a little bit scared. Without even bothering to turn around, I shot back by asking what there even was to panic about dying. He whimpered, prompting a brief beat of silence from me before I calmly told him I wasn't planning on kicking the bucket. He totally blanked, completely baffled as to where I got such crazy main character energy. Yet his hands noticeably stopped shaking nearly as much right after that. The armored green guy then chimed in to ask how we were supposed to fight this, telling them flat out that I would handle pulling the monster's aggro entirely on my own, while they should probably start sprinting right now. He stared right at me in disbelief, questioning if I intended to pull this off solo. Yep. That's the plan, I answered, warning him that there could easily be dozens of those beasts lurking around, and emphasizing that if they didn't haul ass immediately, They wouldn't get another window to escape, having lived for over 40 years already. He had genuinely never witnessed anyone this recklessly bold. For a single person to pull dozens of level 120 monsters at once wasn't just kiting. It was straight-up speedrunning suicide. Even so, he didn't dare try holding me back. After all, what could an ordinary veteran possibly say to a crown prince sitting at level 118, equipped with dual SSS tier abilities? All 9 of them together retreated roughly 20 meters behind my position before planting their feet. The gray-robed guy instinctively tried backing up even further into the distance, until the green-armored brute aggressively snapped at him to stay put, go any further back. And they wouldn't even generate any threat table, rendering the whole dangerous plan completely pointless. Huddling together defensively like a bunch of spooked quails, they could only pray I'd somehow make it back, knowing full well my survival meant theirs too, while I stood completely by myself right at the front lines, locked onto those glowing crimson eyes. Less than 600 had been taken down after 18 rounds, with over 2,000 still remaining. Yet I knew the wasteland held way more than just creepy lizards. Lurking deep out there in the dead zone, something way bigger, darker, and dead silent was chilling. It totally passed for a boulder. But it wasn't. This massive shape was something else entirely, caught dead in its tracks. Snoozing or pretending to nobody else around here, had vision quite as cracked as mine. Registering it quickly, I looked away, clutching a jagged stone. I lifted my right hand. That guy named Wang shouted out from right behind me, telling me not to throw too far and just bait a few, smirking it off. I totally ignored him. Instead of targeting the front row, I launched the rock, sending it flying way past all of them deep into the wasteland, far behind the entire lizard pack. With a sharp thud, it slammed into the dirt for a split second. Total dead silence hit the wasteland. Then over 400 heads whipped around toward the noise instantly right off the bat. The front row let out a piercing screech, that awful sound completely ripping the sky apart. Without warning, hundreds charged instead of just a dozen, all the color drained straight from the gray-robed guy's face. Stammering in pure panic, he asked how many there were, getting zero answers as the green-armored guy's knees gave out. Cursing out loud, Wang yelled that I threw it way too far, trembling uncontrollably. The young kid named Zhang's lips shook, as he barely whispered a single word. Run! A massive wave of lizards rushed forward, making the ground rumble like a stampede of 10,000 warhorses. Those terrifying blood-red eyes kept closing in fast, looking like hundreds of glowing ghost fires in the dark, crashing down hard behind me. The gray-robed guy hit the dirt, screaming at everyone to get out of there. Leaving a shoe behind, the green-armored guy bolted in terror. While all 9 of them scattered, I stayed glued in place, just standing completely still as I watched them approach, snapping wildly in the heavy wind. My robes whipped around even though my physical frame remained frozen like a statue. From up on the high platform, it looked like ants moving their nest. Every single pair of eyes was locked directly onto me. Narrowing his gaze sharply, the crown prince stared hard, muttering under his breath. Third brother estimated at least 400. Letting out a furious curse, he ranted that I lost my mind and was going to get us all slaughtered, wide-eyed and staring intensely. Chen Ting Wang counted up 430. Clutching her blade tightly, fifth sister broke into a cold sweat. A single burning question was on everyone's mind. Just what was I doing as the distance shrank to 40 meters, then 30 and 20, while I still refused to budge? Throwing a quick glance backward over his shoulder, the gray-robed guy assumed I had totally frozen up from pure panic, reaching the 20-meter mark. The massive lead lizard threw its jaws wide open. Vicious purple energy pooled deep inside its throat, instantly mirroring that exact move. Over a dozen beasts flanked behind it. Having clearly wised up from the previous rounds, rather than just targeting my blind back, they completely locked down every possible escape route at once. All of them opened fire. Together, blinding purple beams slammed into the earth around me in massive explosions. A crater several meters wide instantly blasted open, sending a chaotic storm of dirt and rocks flying in every direction. Looking back, the gray-robed guy was certain I had been blown to bits. With a dozen level 120 lizards unleashing a joint strike like that, even a top-tier level 118 prodigy should have been totally vaporized. Yet I was far from finished, having planned this all along. The brutal shockwave punted me into the sky like a kicked pebble, soaring high in a sweeping arc directly over the heads of all 9 teammates. I flew hundreds of meters through the turbulent air, before slamming hard against the dirt near the platform's edge. Bouncing once and rolling over twice, I finally crashed into a jagged stone ridge, and came to a halt, convincing everyone present that I was totally done for. Then, with the casual ease of someone just waking up from a nap, I sat straight up while dusting the debris off my garments. My face showed no flush, and my breathing remained completely steady. Not even a single scratch could be found, while my outer robe sported a few charred holes from the blast. The heavy inner armor concealed underneath remained completely unscathed without a single mark. Popping back up to my feet, I cracked my stiff neck and muttered under my breath that the explosion felt a bit underwhelming since it didn't quite carry me far enough to land squarely on top of the platform third brother's. Jaw hit the floor in sheer shock, completely ignoring his own bleeding leg. Chen Tianyu just stood there gawking while Tai Chu's expression barely flickered, though his piercing gaze never drifted away from me leaning over to the crown prince. Fourth brother whispered that my defense was low-key ridiculous, keeping completely silent in response. The crown prince betrayed his thoughts entirely through his eyes, as he began fundamentally reevaluating everything about me, suspecting that my insane durability might completely break the conventional rules. He was even entertaining a wild new possibility, someone who'd supposedly been 6 feet under for 2 full years, yet I immediately shook that wild thought out of my head. No way. I muttered to myself, totally tripping with zero sweat broken. I launched myself 3 meters straight up onto the platform. Because I'd completely pulled all the aggro away from the group, those 9 trailing behind me actually made it back safe, and sound every single last one of them still breathing, gasping heavily on the concrete. The gray robe guy looked ghost-white, looking pale as a sheet. Wheezing like a busted blacksmith's bellows, the green armor guy struggled for air miraculously. Not a single person bit the dust this round. Staring right at me, Jin Buwen stood there with his jaw completely unhinged. A single player had somehow baited hundreds of bloodthirsty monsters, tanking a massive combined energy blast from over a dozen of them head-on, and walked away looking like nothing even happened, totally unfazed. His mind was completely fried. Buzzing with disbelief, then that horde of 400 beasts violently slammed against the platform, boxing everyone in from all sides. Sinister purple light flared up, charging inside hundreds of gaping throats. Leading the charge, the crown prince leaped down first and started wrecking shop. Backing him up, over 80 players threw down hard against a massive army of 400 monsters. Things were way different this time, because there were simply too many targets. The brutal brawl dragged on for nearly an hour. Chun Tian took a nasty chunk out of his leg from a savage bite. Su's arm snapped violently under the pressure, with white bone visibly poking right through his skin. While young Wang's face was completely drenched in crimson blood, over 20 fighters took heavy damage, though thankfully nobody perished. The aftermath of the clash felt intensely brutal and exhausting. Standing right in the middle of the carnage was the crown prince, dripping from head to toe in thick lizard blood. His trademark gentle smile had completely vanished into thin. Locking his gaze onto me, he stared hard with chilling golden eyes. Pure fury and bloodlust radiated off him, coupled with something deeply unreadable lurking beneath demanding answers. He asked why on earth I lured so many. Holding my ground, I looked right back at him and waited 3 agonizing seconds. I casually dropped that I simply miscalculated my power output. Using a super flat, nonchalant tone like we were talking about the weather outside, dead silence choked the air as everyone stared at me like I'd totally lost my mind. Jin Buwen's mouth dropped wide open in pure shock once again. Chun Ting Wang eyed me suspiciously up and down, as if I were some kind of unfathomable alien monster. Deadly intent flashed intensely across the crown prince's eyes, even though he forcefully forced it back down. A moment later, huddled closely together, the top planet leaders began whispering in private. Chun Ting Wang bluntly argued that I couldn't be allowed to stay alive. Stepping up, third brother chimed in with a question, wondering who would ever pull the monster aggro if they took me out. Chun Ting Wang immediately fired back with an answer. Literally nobody else in this chaotic arena could pull that many mobs and walk away breathing. So I was totally useful for the moment, even if he didn't finish his thought out loud. Once every single monster got wiped out, the unspoken truth hit everyone hard. That was precisely when they'd come hunting for me. A mandate was dropped by the top planet bigwigs. Riding solo next time was going to be my official assignment. Chen Ting Wang claimed I possessed the raw power for it. Dragging others along would just be throwing away extra lives for nothing. Tai Chu passed down the word to keep my baiting numbers low. Pulling another 400 could easily get innocent players fried. To deliver the message, they dispatched the crown prince himself. Strolling over casually, he announced that the upcoming round was a solo mission for me, just keeping it to a few dozen monsters at a time. With a nod, I replied that I got it. I'd play it safe while flashing him a completely deadpan look, but he just beamed his trademark warm smile. Offering thanks on behalf of the squad, he turned and walked off. The moment my back was turned, a low murmur rippled through their ranks. Tai Chu sneered under his breath that, regardless of how cracked a player from a low-tier planet is, they're still basically cannon fodder for the elite worlds. Yanya chimed in that rules are rules. Leaning over, the fourth brother pressed the third brother to admit if something felt seriously off here. My defensive stats were straight up, defying all logic and reason. Guessing out loud, the third brother figured maybe I had some kind of crazy high-tier defense rule. That theory was totally rejected by the fourth brother. Coming out of a planet ranked in the 90s, spitting out that level of freak talent was downright impossible. Still, he kept his mouth shut because staying alive took absolute priority. Keeping a sharp eye on me this whole time was the fifth sister. A very specific detail was driving her crazy. When the Crown Prince dropped the solo order on me, my expression didn't even twitch or bat an eyelid. It was like he'd just invited me out for a casual dinner, instead of telling me to go throw hands with 2,000 bloodthirsty monsters all by myself. The vibe vividly reminded her of a ghost from her past, a legend who had already been in the grave for 2 whole years. That absolute madman who soloed a level 20 rift straight to pure color status. The exact same icon who slipped away from 10 level 190 gankers on 2 separate occasions. The prodigy who single-handedly cleared the entire realm of creation. Only that guy possessed this exact brand of chill. This kind of eerie, straight-up inhuman composure. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped her sword hilt tighter. Nah, that impossibility was 6 feet under. Elder Shang Xian had personally verified the corpse with his own eyes. Locked-in confirmation came straight from the verification stone, proving dead meant dead. Suppressing the wild thought, she pushed it way down. Sounding out across the quiet space, the Crown Prince called my name. Lifting my eyelids slowly, I got up from the stone ground and marched toward the platform's edge alone. Glancing downward, I stared out over the scorched, desolate wasteland, where over 2,000 lizards locked their blood-red eyes straight onto me, as if I were already a walking corpse. Stepping off the edge, I dropped down and moved forward, keeping a steady pace like a casual stroll. 100 meters, then 80, 60, 50. Pulling to a halt, I watched the absolute unit of a lizard open its jaws as a sick purple light began to pool inside the entire row right behind it, mirrored the move linking their violet glows together like a literal river of stars. With a faint smirk, I crouched low to the ground, snatched up a stone, and stood straight back up taking aim. I hurled it. Not at the front ranks, though. Putting every ounce of strength into the throw, I launched it flying way past every single lizard out there deep into the furthest depths of the wasteland, making a soft thud. The rock finally connected with the dirt. Yet cutting through that dead silence, it echoed like a drop bomb, snapping every single head around in unison. All 2,000 of them at once then, the biggest beast whipped its gaze back to me, eyes burning with pure rage, as its jaw unhinged into a piercing screech. Every last lizard jolted upright simultaneously, mouths wide open and throats letting out a deafening chorus together, delivering a sound wave resembling a massive tsunami, or like entire mountain ranges crashing down around them, shattered by the chaos. Jean Baohan's ears went completely deaf. Staring out in horror, his eyes bulged wide open. This wasn't just a casual dozen moving in, nor was it hundreds. All 2,000 were charging full send. The terrain didn't just rattle slightly, it convulsed violently underfoot like a major earthquake, giving the impression something monstrous was clawing its way up. From underneath, as the stone platform itself began rocking hard, tiny plumes of dust puffed out from the cracks between the tiles. All the color instantly drained from the Crown Prince's face. This wasn't mere nervous pale, it was bone-deep, authentic terror white. Having lived nearly 40 years, he thought he had seen it all. Yet watching 2,000 level 120 beasts charge at once was a first, a brand new nightmare bellowing at the top of his lungs like thunder. He ordered everyone to prep for battle, his voice carrying absolute panic. Panicking aloud, third brother claimed the numbers were way too high, snapping back. The Crown Prince told him to shut it and lock in because escaping wasn't an option anymore. Clutching the hilt of his thin sword tightly, fourth brother stood ready, though his hand shook uncontrollably with a tremor he couldn't control. Meanwhile, fifth sister drew her blade. Even though her fingers stayed locked tight, those lashes gave her away with a subtle flutter. An ashen, iron-gray shade swept entirely across Qin Ting Wang's face. 4 gritted words barely forced their way through his teeth: that absolute maniac, while his brother begged him to fall back. Qin Ting Wang fired back by asking where they could possibly retreat. With nowhere left to run, even Tai Chu wore a freezing, deadpan expression, completely emotionless deep within those icy eyes. Tai Chu finally flashed a brand new emotion, pure terror, right as 2,000 monsters swarmed forward in a single wave. The ground violently rocked like a major earthquake. A strange purple hue took over the sky, fueled by the blinding light charging up in all their throats. Standing dead in my tracks, I didn't even bother flinching. Hundreds of them unloaded all at once. Blinding violet beams locked down every possible escape route. A massive explosion blew out a crater spanning dozens of meters wide. I got sent flying backward like a literal cannonball, soaring clear across the entire platform. before crashing hard into the stone wall behind it. The brutal impact splintered the bedrock in a spiderweb pattern and buried me deep beneath a heap of rubble. Everyone low-key figured I was totally toast this time. Then a single hand shoved its way out of the debris, moving with total casualness, completely devoid of panic, like someone lazily stretching from under a cozy blanket. I casually brushed away the loose stones popped upright and patted the dust off my head, rocking the exact same vibe as before, unfazed, unbothered, and entirely chill. Only one tiny, paper-thin scratch marked the back of my hand. Honestly, that was literally it. Jean Bohan's brain completely short-circuited on the spot. Shun-Ting Wang stared right at me with genuine dread in his eyes for the very first time, and muttered under his breath that I couldn't be allowed to stay alive. Tai Chu's hands wouldn't stop shaking, spurred less by the surrounding beasts, and more by staring right at me. He was low-key questioning if I was even human at all. Suddenly, those 2,000 lizards slammed into the platform. Shouting at the top of his lungs, the Crown Prince ordered everyone to fight back. Every last one of them leaped down into the fray. Knowing it was their absolute final shot, a brutal bloodbath unfolded on both sides. Heads started rolling as the Crown Prince sliced them off one by one. Third brother was out there crushing skulls left and right, while fifth sister systematically stabbed straight through throats. Shun-Ting Wang's silver blade dropped them cleanly 3 at a time. Blinding beams from Tai Chu's mirror blasted smoking holes through chests, and Yanya gracefully drifted in and out of the shifting shadows' throats, getting sliced left and right, laughing like an absolute psycho. Hun Dun Yang hurled energy blasts right into the swarming pack, even though the sheer volume of monsters was totally insane. Like way too many to handle out on the platform, Chen Tianyu took a brutal purple blast head-on, leaving his chest armor completely shattered with his flesh scorched down to the bone. Blood poured straight from his mouth. His eyes shut tight as he went completely motionless, clutching his fallen brother's lifeless body. Shun-Ting Wang shook with pure rage. He glared right at me while I sat slumped against the wall, vowing with everything he had that he'd take me down. The gray-robed guy bought it, and the green armor dude just got his head cleanly bitten off. Wang, Zhang, Lu, Zhao, Sun, and Li Zhou, every single soul hailing from outside the top 10 planets, was wiped out. Literally all of them. Not a single survivor was left standing. Third brother's axe got snapped right in half, so he grabbed some dead guy's sword and kept swinging. Fourth brother's thin blade met the exact same fate, shattering into pieces. After hammering away at the enemy for nearly 2 hours straight, he honestly couldn't even lift his arms anymore. Desperate, he asked the Crown Prince if they were actually going to make it out alive. Without missing a beat, the Crown Prince told him yes, cracking a bitter smile. Fourth brother chose to put his faith in those words. A savage bite tore deep into fifth sister's left arm, ripping the flesh wide open as crimson blood streamed down. She didn't let out a single scream, though her hand trembled out of pure shock, dragging a heavily bleeding leg behind him. Shun-Ting Wang kept pressing forward, though his pace grew painfully sluggish. Tai Chu's mirror fractured from being overworked, while Yanya's shadow flickered and began to fade out. Han Duan Yang's energy balls were running dangerously low on juice, shrinking rapidly from basin-sized spheres down to the size of a fist. 2 brutal hours of non-stop warfare had passed, and though over 1,000 lizards lay dead, there were still another 1,000 swarming the place. Out of more than 90 people, fewer than 30 were breathing. With over 20 severely wounded, less than 10 had any fight left in them. Third brother finally collapsed hard onto his knees, his left arm completely broken with a jagged bone sticking straight out, and his body drenched in blood. Tears welling up in his eyes, he looked up at the Crown Prince and choked out that he wasn't ready to die. A heavy knot formed in the Crown Prince's throat. As he crouched down low, he promised him that death wasn't an option today. Right after that, the Crown Prince spun around to face me. I was still kicking back against the wall, arms crossed over my chest, just observing the whole circus unfold, wearing a completely deadpan expression. He barked out my name and demanded to know why I wasn't lifting a finger to fight. He claimed that my survival wouldn't happen either if they all perished. Keeping my mouth shut, I just stared right back at him. Every single pair of eyes was dead set on me. The wounded ones and the half-dead souls, every last one of them. Dragging his bleeding leg forward, Shun Tianguang started cursing me out, questioning if I was even a human being, accusing me of baiting the monsters, sitting back to watch them clash while I chilled. Teju chimed in that doom awaited them all if I refused to help. Trembling violently in his grip was his cracked mirror. Dusting myself off as I stood straight up, I casually dropped that those monsters low-key terrified me. Stating I was totally out of juice, I told them to handle it themselves. Absolute silence. Drenched in blood, third brother was sprawled out on the dirt, fixing his bloodshot gaze straight onto me. He demanded to know if selling them out was my plan after drawing in 2,000 monsters, reminding them that fighting was never my demand. I noted they could have just posted up on the platform like me to catch the show, even suggesting straight-faced that those monster blasts were actually great for opening up their energy pathways. Maybe they ought to give it a shot. Not a peep came from anyone, gazing at me like I was some kind of absolute freak. Driven completely to the edge of desperation, Xin-Ting Wang demanded to know my actual endgame. Replying that I was sticking strictly to our agreed-upon deal, I pointed out that baiting isn't fighting, and my part was done. Their survival was strictly their own headache. Admitting my defense stat was high while my helpfulness was 0. I wished them good luck, Tai Chu's features contorting with pure fury. He fired back, asking if I even knew who they were. My response was effortless. Top 10 planets, something common knowledge to everybody. Demanding if I comprehended the consequences once we cleared out. I said nope, only for him to warn that my home planet was getting wiped out. With a single word, the Tai Chu star could erase Tianyuan's star off the map. Locking eyes with him, I made it clear that killing me was entirely off the table, and destroying Tianyuan's star was equally impossible, seeing as they weren't making it out of this place alive. Silence fell heavy again until Xin-Ting Wang asked what I was implying. Explaining that my initial plan was to let them squirm for just a bit longer, I added that since he successfully caught my vibe, pulling my move early felt like the right call. Dropping it plain and simple, I told them all they were checking out right here today. Xin-Ting Wang burst out laughing, purely because he thought I was totally losing it instead of finding anything funny. Snickering under his breath, he demanded to know if I genuinely thought I could take them all down solo. A sharp question cut through the air as he pressed on, challenging whether I seriously believed I could handle the whole crew by myself. That was my cue to flash a grin. Not a polite, fake smile, mind you, but the kind of grin you wear when you're finally done keeping up appearances and dropping the act for good. Without missing a beat, I threw it back at them, demanding who on earth had leaked that I was level 118. Dead silence fell over the room as the Crown Prince locked a heavy gaze on me, noting aloud that the Tianyuan Star Prince was supposed to be level 118. Was I low-key implying I wasn't Zai and Zio? He'd been low-key suspicious for a while now, and the second I dropped that I wasn't level 118, it clicked for him that I wasn't who I pretended to be. Instantly, he demanded to know my true identity. Telling him to take a wild guess, I watched his brain practically short-circuit from overthinking. Every single detail raced through his head. Some crazy legend who walked away from 10 level 190 gankers. Some beast who actually cleared the realm of creation. Some anomaly who awakened a god-tier talent. And someone who had supposedly kicked the bucket 2 years ago. No way it could be true since that guy was dead for real. With Elder Shun Xian having personally ID'd the corpse and the death stone backing it up. Yet those eyes of mine were just too chill, too unfathomably eerie, carrying the exact vibe of that ghost from the past. With a distinct tremor in his voice, he grilled me once more about who I actually was. My reply was simple. He already had the answer right in front of him. All the color drained instantly from his face, leaving it ghost white. Stammering nervously, he insisted it was downright impossible, arguing that the guy was 6 feet under, verified by the elder himself. Nodding calmly, I replied that yeah, the death stone totally lit up, but I happened to roll with more than just one body. That specific corpse was indeed me, but the thing that flatlined definitely wasn't my real self. Absolute confusion hung in the air as nobody grasped what I meant. Breaking the tension, the Crown Prince suddenly dropped a single name, Sulin. Instantly, absolute dead silence swallowed the entire platform. Xin-Ting Wang's mind practically imploded right then and there. Sulin, the legendary wolf shadow, the madman who soaked up hits from 10 level 190 powerhouses back when he was merely level 30. The trailblazer who actually conquered the realm of creation, buried for 2 whole years, and now standing right here breathing. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he refused to buy that it could ever be true. Tai Chu fixed his eyes on me, flashing a look of pure, unadulterated terror, not the panic of someone just afraid of losing a brawl, but a deep-seated dread of my very existence. To think a dead guy somehow manifested inside the secret realm, running around wearing someone else's face, while casually dragging 2,000 monsters into a trap, just to sit back and watch the carnage unfold. Now claiming everyone's gonna bite the dust right here, such a wild claim would normally be brushed off completely. Yet it was coming straight from Sulin Tai. Chu demanded to know why I had just leaked my identity. Keeping my mouth shut would have left them completely clueless. I let them know it was because their time was already up. Dead men don't spill secrets. Xin-Ting Wang burst into a manic laugh, and declared even being Su Lin wouldn't save me from getting jumped by all of them. He swung around to face the rest Tai Chu, Yang Yahan, and Dun Yang the Crown Prince calling out to them urgently. Let's swarm him together since he's completely flying so. Chaos erupted in a split second. Every single one of them still able to move rushed me at once. Taking me down was their absolute top priority. Before dealing with the remaining monster's third brother spearheaded the charge, fiercely bringing his heavy axe down toward my skull with brutal force. Letting it land squarely on my shoulder, without dodging a bit, a staggering 10 billion divine attack damage crashed into me, which did 0 damage, as the full impact ricocheted right back. His axe chipped, and the shaft shattered into pieces, his palms split wide open from the shock, sending him flying backward to smash hard against the platform, as his chest armor caved in as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Meanwhile, fourth brother thrust his slender sword straight at my throat. I didn't even flinch. The blade struck my neck and snapped completely in half. He stared in disbelief at my skin, showing not even a scratch. Chun Ting Guang flanked me from the side, delivering his absolute heaviest blow. His gleaming silver sword connected with my back, failing to sink in even a single millimeter. The vicious recoil shattered his arm instantly. His weapon clattered uselessly onto the stone floor. He stood rooted to the spot in shock before a dozen more strikes rained down on me simultaneously. Every single assailant was blown backward through the air. While I remained completely unscathed, they lay scattered across the ground in defeat, bones broken and fractured everywhere, shattered weapons and pooling blood surrounding them. I stood right in the center, without a single crease on my attire, casting my gaze down upon them to ask if they had any final words to share. Otherwise, I'd be escorting them out permanently. Third brother started pleading desperately, first swearing on his life he would never cross me again. Fourth brother claimed that Elder Shang and the king were the real masterminds behind my murder, and totally absolved himself and the others from it. Tilting my head sideways, I casually reminded them about their secret plot to wipe me out right after the monsters were cleared, dropping the bombshell that I possessed a cheat code talent for eavesdropping on people trash-talking me behind my back. I instantly silenced the whole crowd, though Chen Tianwang refused to grovel. Gritting his teeth through the pain, he spat out just 3 words: "Just kill me." I had to hand it to him. The guy actually had spine. Tai Chu immediately chimed in, offering to pretend nothing ever happened, while Yang Ya suddenly materialized from his shadow wearing a fake grin, calling me brother and begging to be BFFs. Han Danyang swore on his life that his lips were permanently sealed, as everyone else desperately joined the panic, tossing out wild oaths and begging for mercy. Sweeping my gaze across all of them, I looked at the group of over 20, some sobbing, some swearing, some frozen in fear. Some stayed completely silent. Positioned rigidly at the very back, fifth sister bit her bleeding arm with a stubborn look, adamantly refusing to utter a single syllable. With a smirk, I asked if their little circus performance was over. They froze instantly, and I dropped a cold "good." Time to wrap things up as I thrust my right hand upward, letting blood-red crimson lights bleed out from my boots across the cold stone platform. Blood sacrifice was initiated, right before the crown prince made his move. Fumbling inside his heavy robes, he pulled out a fist-sized crystal sphere, glowing transparently with a swirling golden liquid trapped inside, entirely etched with tiny glowing golden runes. Slamming it hard against the ground, a torrent of blinding golden light erupted, weaving itself into a massive dome-shaped barrier that encapsulated everyone, the holy light shield. Countless golden runes darted across its glowing surface like agitated tadpoles. Unleashing my blood sacrifice right at it, I struck with a 23,000 trillion divine attack, yet the shield didn't even flinch. Sacrificing 1% of my total blood pool as damage, I threw another punch, unleashing a 1,150 trillion divine strike. The runes flashed once before going completely dead and still. Hammering away at it non-stop for 30 straight minutes yielded 0 results. With chilling calmness, the Crown Prince explained that the Holy Light Shield was forged directly from the founding king's personal blood essence, meaning its defense stats matched half of the divine blood capacity of a level 199 Awakener. A full week is how long it lasts. Smirking, he challenged whether I genuinely believed I could smash it open. That barrier made it impossible for me. Their entire vibe did a total 180 flip. Mocking me outright, Han Danyang burst into laughter, cackling loudly. Third brother poked fun at my total helplessness, glaring at me like a caged beast that had finally broken free. Tai Chu muttered that I'd slipped up big time by blowing my cover. He was spot on. I had indeed messed up. Letting my real identity slip was a rookie mistake. Staying undercover, as Qin Shao would have been smarter. Yet it was too late now, since they all knew Su Lin was back. The fact that I was breathing was no longer a secret to them, blazing with fury. Chen Ting Wang glared at the Crown Prince, demanding to know why he hadn't deployed the shield sooner, arguing his brother would still be kicking today. The Crown Prince dropped the truth that suspicions about me not being Shi Yun Zio had lingered, Since the moment I tanked 400 monsters, patiently waiting for me to out myself had been his game. Everyone's safety was just collateral damage, for his gamble sacrificing Shun Tianguang's brother was a price he was willing to pay. Fixing his gaze on me, the Crown Prince admitted he'd been playing the long game all along. Yeah. I told him straight up the puzzle pieces finally fit together. My power level was simply too insane, for Kai Yunzio's silence stretched out from me for a good while. Before a bitter laugh escaped, he wasn't wrong. My carelessness had finally caught up. And now 7 days from now, they would pack up and leave broadcasting the news across every single planet in the star system that Su Lin had somehow survived. A fresh wave of bounty hunters would be on my tail again, releasing my tight fists. I accepted that smashing the shield was a dead end. Taking them down right here was completely off the table. Wiping out the remaining monsters was the only play left for me while chasing down whatever hidden loot this mysterious realm was concealing. Without uttering a single word, I strode toward the platform's edge and took a leap downward, diving straight into the sea of monsters locked inside the barrier. 7 days and they're out of here. Tai Chu reminded everyone. The entire star sector is about to find out Su Lin is breathing, adding fuel to the fire. Yangya claimed that's when my countdown to execution begins. Resting her shoulder against the shimmering barrier, Fifth Sister watched my retreating figure, while reflecting on the wild legends of level 30s outliving decimation, and level 190 powerhouses wiping out the realm of creation. Back 2 years ago, that epic status belonged entirely to someone else's myth. Yet out of nowhere, that living legend was standing dead in her tracks, ready to take her down for good. She demanded to know what was going through my head, leaving everyone speechless except for one undeniable reality. Once they finally break out in 7 days, the whole star region is totally getting fried all over again. All because of me, I tracked right across the ashen wasteland straight toward the remaining pack of over 1,000 monsters. My stride was dead calm, feeling like a casual evening stroll. Tuned in from safety, 24 pairs of eyes tracked my every move from deep inside that shimmering golden barrier. Third brother totally lost his mind, blurting out what the hell I thought I was doing by taking on 1,000 beasts solo. Cool as ice, the Crown Prince chimed in that I was just wiping out monsters. Tai Chu stated straight up that if I had any fear of dying, I would have met my end 2 years back. That instantly shut everyone up. 50 meters away from the horde, I killed my momentum. Up at the front of the pack, the biggest lizard still had half of somebody's guts dangling right out of its jaws while it snarled at me. Locking eyes with it, I hooked my right hand upward, curled my fingers toward my chest, and dropped a single word: "Bring it." Without a second thought, all 1,000+ of them rushed me at once. The earth trembled so violently that the folks shivering inside the barrier could feel the platform vibrating beneath them. Blinking my eyes shut for a second and then wide open, I triggered Ice Corp's taunt. A visible shockwave of absolute frost blasted outward from my boots in every single direction. Every single lizard it swept past had its pupils shift from bright crimson to a dead dark red, as if a thick fog had totally hijacked their brains. Their minds were locked onto one obsession now, erasing me from existence, leaving zero room for anything else. A barrage of hundreds of purple laser beams slammed into me simultaneously. The blast gouged out a massive crater spanning dozens of meters wide, while thick dust and flying rubble swallowed me whole. Third brother nervously called out to see if I had flatlined. As the smoke cleared, I was just chilling there, casually brushing off my shoulder, completely unscathed. Glancing down at my stat panel, each of those hits dealt 10 billion damage points to me. Basically a total joke compared to my 115 billion health pool, while every strike bounced right back with 45% reflected damage under the taunt effect. Those brainless lizards just wouldn't quit rushing me. Out of nowhere, the lead lizard's chest blew wide open right after, the second one popped, then the 10th, and finally the 100th, dropping in neat rings around me like falling dominoes. Their very own power was reflected back inside them, ripping each chest apart, as thick black blood sprayed everywhere, forming heavy streams across the scorched dirt. 100 down, make that 200, then 500, pushing 800. They were getting reaped like wheat in a field. I didn't even have to lift a finger, just standing right there, and taking every hit head-on. Every single strike turned out to be fatal for the attacker. Hardly 10 minutes passed before the final lizard dropped. It collapsed onto the ground with a gaping hole, the size of a basin, torn through its chest. Its glassy eyes stayed open, though the life was completely gone. An eerie silence took over the wasteland. Over 1,000 lifeless bodies littered the ground, piled high in massive heaps. Dark blood flowed like winding rivers, gleaming under the glow of the purple sky above. I stood calmly right in the middle of the carnage, my dark clothes remaining completely spotless. Not a single drop of blood could breach the barrier around me. Silence filled the air as their jaws dropped wide open, yet no words could escape their mouths. Third brother finally managed to squeak out a sound, muttering that he finally understood why Elder Shuang Xin wasted 1,000 years of his lifespan just to hunt me down. If you don't take out a freak like this, he figured, you'll never get another wink of sleep. Fourth brother stared at me and spat out 3 words through clenched teeth. He's totally inhuman. He insisted. There's no way a regular person could pull off what I just did. Shun Tianguang dropped hard to his knees, with his shattered arm hanging limp at his side, fixing an unblinking, horrified gaze on me. His mind raced back to his brother Shun Tianyu, taking his final breath in his arms with a charred chest, moving lips that formed no words, and blood spilling past his lips as his eyes slowly shut. He had lived solely to exact brutal revenge and take down Kai Yin Kao, only to realize the true nightmare wasn't Kai Yin Kao at all, it was Su Lin, an absolute force of nature he could never defeat. Closing his eyes in despair, he slumped his head down and choked out a quiet apology to his fallen brother, whispering barely loud enough to catch, leaning against the barrier. Tai Chu clutched his shattered mirror tight. For the very first time in his life, those chilly eyes looked totally dead lost. He was supposed to be the top legend of Tai Chu Star. Sitting at level 119 sporting dual SSS traits, everyone hailed him as a certified prodigy, an absolute monster. A future king in the making. He totally bought into the hype too, yet watching me stand unfazed right in the middle of a corpse field, he suddenly felt like a complete zero, completely cooked genius or prodigy standing right in front of me. It was all a total joke after grinding for hours with an 80-person squad and taking over 60 casualties just to drop 1,000 monsters. I wiped out that exact same 1,000 in under 10 minutes flat. Without lifting a finger, they totally brought it on themselves. Honestly, every single attack bounced right back and ripped them to shreds. Fifth sister's jaw dropped wide open. Completely unable to snap it shut, her gaze remained glued to the massive sea of bodies, then shifted to the spotless figure standing dead center. An eerie silence blanketed the wasteland, with over 1,000 lizard carcasses littered everywhere. While streams of dark blood pooled like rivers, my outfit remained spotless as I glanced back toward the platform, where 24 people were crammed inside that golden barrier looking like caged chickens. Ignoring them completely, I strolled deeper into the bleak wasteland. The Crown Prince caught the vibe first, noting the ground humming with vibrations, not from a monster rush, but rather like something massive taking slow breaths, pulsing heavily like a giant heartbeat. Tai Chu muttered that whatever lurked out there had to hit at least level 125. His hands starting to tremble again, driven purely by raw instinct rather than fear. Pushing forward, I noticed the stench shifting entirely, losing that regular monster funk to take on something much older and heavier, reeking like decay stewing for thousands of years. Roughly 5 minutes later, I slammed into a solid wall of darkness, not your average nighttime shadow, but a pitch-black void where light couldn't pierce at all. Piercing through the gloom, a pair of eyes glowed, featuring dark gold vertical pupils, each orb stretching the size of a massive wash basin. And that's no exaggeration, they were literally that gigantic. Breaking the silence, I dropped a single word. Show yourself. Out of the pitch-black shadows, it emerged, resembling a colossal mountain scaling upward from the earth. The head appeared first, so damn massive that straining my neck was required just to catch the crack, followed by a neck built thick like a bridge pier, and then the body of a dragon. A jet-black beast with individual scales spanning the size of a doorway. Its wings remained tucked tightly at its flanks, each bone spike protruding like a lethal spear. Scraping along the dirt floor behind it, deep trenches were carved as it gazed down at me like I was totally insignificant. Dark-scale dragon level 12810, trillion divine blood, 1 trillion divine attack skills. Dark dragon breath packing 5 trillion damage plus dragon might that utterly slashes all stats by 90%. Dark-scale armor, mitigating 80% of incoming damage, plus a death-triggered self-destruct mechanism, dealing 80 trillion. The Lizard King reigned as the true overlord of this wasteland. Standing on the platform, third brother was totally losing his mind over those insane numbers. Shun Ting Wang let out a bitter laugh, claiming my survival odds were 0, and I was totally toast, boasting 2 trillion in attack power. The Crown Prince flashed a quiet smile while silently praying for my demise. Dying right here would ensure nobody ever discovered Su Lin was still breathing. Shifting my gaze upward, I looked at the beast. Its scale was truly staggering, standing right before it felt like being a mere ant next to an elephant. Stepping forward defiantly, I spoke up. Hey buddy, you're looking pretty beefy. Not a single flicker of reaction came from it. It merely fixed its gaze downward and blew twin blasts of scorching sulfur-laced air straight from its nostrils. With a smirk, I dropped one more word. Bring it, the dragon's pupils constricted into sharp slits, having lived for God knows how many centuries. It had never witnessed anything this audacious, a puny bug, standing right in its face and shouting. Bring it, its jaws swung wide open. Dark golden radiance began pooling deep within its throat, glowing so fiercely that the entire desolate landscape was dyed in that hue. Back on the platform, third brother instinctively shielded his eyes, while fourth brother peeked anxiously through his fingers to ask if making it out alive was even possible for me. A blinding beam of dark gold energy was unleashed by the dragon, measuring a good 5 meters across, and slamming down upon me like a massive celestial blade, falling from the heavens, shattering the ground completely as dirt erupted meters into the air, leaving behind a massive mushroom cloud, composed of dust and debris. An intense tremor ripped right through the desolate wasteland. As the heavy platform rocked and the shaky barrier groaned, third brother panicked and hollered to see if I had flatlined. Thick clouds of dust began drifting away into the air, while I was holding my ground right there. A couple of singed holes dotted my outfit, and my usually neat hair was totally messed up, though soot smeared my face. I stood firmly anchored in place, swiftly pulling up my system panel. I saw 2 trillion divine attack damage hammering against my health pool, which honestly wasn't too wild to handle. Right as 1,000 billion of that damage bounced straight back at the dragon, casually brushing the lingering ash off my shoulder. I tilted my head up at the beast and dropped a low question. Is that seriously all you've got? Complete silence locked down the platform, with third brother's jaw dropping so far down you could practically shove a whole fist inside, while Chin Ting Wang kept stammering like a broken record that the whole thing was literally impossible. Tai Chu gripped his cracked mirror so hard his knuckles turned ghostly white, and the crown prince's arrogant smirk completely vanished as he muttered under his breath, wondering what kind of monster I actually was. Gazing down at me, the massive dragon looked low-key perplexed, having lived for countless ages, where a single fiery breath could level entire mountain ranges, yet it had blasted me with full force, and I didn't even catch a scratch. Looking straight up into its glowing eyes, I asked if it was finished yet. When it stayed frozen in place, I smirked and said, bet. My turn now, as I lifted my right hand up high, skipping any flashy charge-up animations or over-the-top effects. I threw out a sharp, effortless slash cutting through the empty air void. Rent activated, consuming 10% of my blood as raw attack damage, yielding a staggering 11,500 trillion divine strike. A razor-thin, dead-silent fracture rippled out from my fingertip, surging directly toward the dragon's chest. It wasn't a loud, explosive kind of destruction, but rather felt like a pane of glass snapping, with chilling, quiet bone, chillingly clean and terrifyingly precise. The microscopic fissure brushed the beast's armored hide and sliced right through, stretching neatly from its left shoulder down to its right hip, tracing a flawless, deadly diagonal line straight as an arrow drawn with a ruler across tough scales, dense muscle, and thick bone. Every single internal organ cleanly split into exact halves. For the very first time, the legendary dragon lowered its gaze to inspect itself, and deep within those dark gold pupils flickered a strange emotion. Not rage at all, but pure, unadulterated confusion, like its ancient brain couldn't process what had just hit it. While its health bar instantly plummeted from full straight down to 0, 10 trillion divine blood points, wiped out in a single hit. Over on the platform, everyone was completely shook. Speechless silence fell upon the crowd. Third brother kept rambling incoherently about how it was just a single hit. Chin Ting Wang completely forgot about his fractured arm in the chaos. Tai Chu stood there with trembling lips. The crown prince's arrogant grin was long gone. He whispered under his breath that this was my actual power. Right then, the dragon's eyes flashed fiercely, shifting from gold into a glowing blood red like molten lava, surging with hellfire, as if it was about to blow up big time. Unleashing world-ending dragon flames, the ultimate death trigger skill, boasting an 80 trillion divine attack rating, fractures began glowing across the colossal body of the beast. Dark crimson light gushed outward as though something had been raging inside it for ages, and finally burst through an opening, growing intensely brighter and scorching hot by the second. Then it detonated, letting out a deafening roar that ripped reality apart. Every single person on the platform got slammed flat onto the ground. Blood started leaking from third brother's ears. A brutal shockwave tore right through the earth, not just leaving behind a normal crater, but stripping away the entire top layer for miles around. Tons of dirt and boulders flew into the air like paper scraps before getting shredded completely to dust. As the platform violently rattled, deep cracks spiderwebbed across the ancient stone tiles. Huge chunks of the edge snapped off and plummeted down. A towering mushroom cloud billowed from the center, painted in menacing dark red, with golden lightning dancing inside. The entire wasteland was caught in a massive blaze. The physical body of the dragon was completely gone, shattered into burning fragments that hammered deep impact craters. Everywhere they happened to land, that violent shockwave kept pushing outward for kilometers, vaporizing every single lizard corpse it crossed paths with, leaving not even a trace of bone dust inside the barrier. Wide-eyed onlookers stared blankly at the blazing inferno. Third brother nervously asked how much damage that blast actually was. Fourth brother answered that it hit 80 trillion. Clocking in at 40 times the dragon breath I had previously tanked, Chun Ting Wang let out a quiet, chilling laugh, claiming that I was definitely toast this time around. Even the crown prince watched intensely with tightly clenched fists. Fifth sister remained frozen in place with warm blood dripping steadily down her arm. She felt completely numb to any physical pain. Her mind raced with worry over whether I could possibly survive. She recalled how effortlessly I shrugged off 2 trillion earlier. Though this scale was 40 times worse, she suddenly noticed her hands were shaking. And it wasn't from the pain, even though she low-key panicked about whether that guy who almost took her out was gonna bite the dust. She totally lost track of why she even cared. As the minutes ticked by, thick smoke rolled in, and fierce flames raged, blinding everyone completely. Then the hazy dust finally settled. Right where the blast went off, a massive crater sat, stretching at least a kilometer wide. It plunged down so deep the bottom was totally invisible. Dark red glass had formed from the melted walls, which were still softly steaming at the very bottom. Standing dead center in the pit was someone. My outer clothes had literally burned to crisp, leaving my inner armor exposed and heavily fractured, as if it might shatter any second now. My hair was a total hot mess like a bird's nest, and thick ash completely coated my face. A thin line of blood trickled down from the corner of my mouth, making its way past my chin, yet I stood totally solid. Brushing the dust off my shoulder casually, I glanced up toward the platform and spoke up. For something that massive, that attack barely tickled inside the barrier. All eyes locked onto me climbing out of that crater. Third brother couldn't wrap his head around my calling an 80 trillion divine strike a mere tickle. Fifth sister watched me emerge with 0 outer garments left, cracked inner armor, messy hair, and an ash-stained face, yet not bearing a single real wound. Biting her lip, she finally dawned on the truth. I wasn't just completely fearless of death. I literally couldn't die at all. Chin Ting Wang was left completely numb and ghosted, while Tai Chu gripped his cracked mirror with white knuckles, desperately trying to calculate my actual power level. Figuring it out was impossible for him, and frankly, nobody else could either. I climbed out, dusted myself off, and eyed the barrier. About 20 people were crammed in there like caged chickens, giving them 0 attention. I noticed my inner armor was still cracking. Level 100 gear just couldn't tank 80 trillion damage. Still, it held together enough to remain wearable. My health was full, and spare items sat in my soul storage, though none of them matched my current level. Checking the time, not even half a day had passed since entry, leaving 6.5 days on the clock. Turning around, I headed deeper into the wasteland. Just a couple steps later, vibrant golden glow started bleeding up through the dirt, starting out super faint, before blazing blindingly bright. Without a single sound, the ground parted wide, just like 2 massive doors swinging open. Liquid gold poured out, revealing a hidden stairway below worn stone steps featuring smooth, rounded edges, every single inch covered in carved runes, throbbing with a golden pulse that beat like a heart. Those stairs plunged straight down into pitch blackness with no bottom anywhere in sight. Back up top, Chun Ting Guang spoke up, claiming it had to be the secret realm's grand prize. Tai Chu totally agreed with him. Standing right at the edge, I peered down into the abyss. Instead of rushing in blindly, I took my time. Mysterious murals flickered to life along the walls as I made my descent. Starting with the first painting, which depicted a figure facing off against a dragon that looked like an exact clone of the beast I just iced. The second panel showed that exact same warrior punching straight through its chest. The third displayed the fallen dragon lying dead, while the ground ripped open amid a flood of golden light. The fourth captured the person stepping right into the radiance and fading away into nothingness. Making me hesitate was that the creator of this whole realm, or just the last guy who actually beat it. I honestly had 0 clue. Back up on the platform, third brother was low-key losing his mind. He was throwing a fit about a once-in-a-10,000 years prize being right there for the taking, while we just stood by watching some random guy score. Yet fourth brother snapped at him to go grab it himself, daring him to try and see if he didn't get folded. Furious, third brother slammed his fist into the earth and swore. Meanwhile, the crown prince just flashed a calm grin, advising them to let me claim the loot, pointing out that whatever treasure I secure down there is gonna stay right on me when this domain finally shuts down and spits everyone back outside automatically, where a welcoming committee will be waiting for my arrival, making it impossible for me to ghost, causing third brother's eyes to light up as he declared I was already a dead man. The Crown Prince didn't utter another single word for a solid 10 minutes. I kept walking down those endless steps, keeping track of every single pace. Successive murals flared up along the walls as I passed, featuring a fighter destroying a dragon entering a grand palace, and dropping to one knee before an ancient book suddenly. The volume started glowing intensely bright, with a person being completely sucked inside it, navigating. Past over 1,000 steps, a massive black door finally appeared before me. Rising 10 meters high, it easily swung open with a gentle push, as if it had been Loki waiting for my arrival all along, revealing a hall so ridiculously enormous behind it that neither the ceiling nor the walls were anywhere in sight. Mirror-polished black stone floors stretched out everywhere, decked in golden runes that gave off a faint radiance resembling morning light. A small stone pedestal sat right in the center, holding a palm-sized black-covered book on top, featuring a distinct circle drawn across the front cover. Right inside that circle stood a figure with one hand raised upward, while something glowing flickered in its palm, looking dead-on identical to the mural. I flipped open the first page. Divine Blood Conversion, Unknown Grade Effect, listed inside. Upon fully mastering it, Divine Attack would scale to 10% of total Divine Blood. My blood capacity sat at 115,000 trillion, while my attack rating was a measly 250, but learning this technique would cause my attack to suddenly skyrocket to 11,500 trillion, marking a massive multiplier increase of billions of times over. My breath hitched for a brief second, though there was a major catch. Mastering it had to happen within 7 days inside this realm. Otherwise, it would be wiped from my memory for good. Picking up the tome, a flash of golden light shot straight from it into my forehead, feeling like someone dumped ice water directly into my brain. Every single word, diagram, and rune got instantly burned into my memory, dropping down in the corner. I immediately got to training. The method detailed using blood as a guiding force to convert it directly into raw attack power. Every individual word made sense on its own, yet together, they made absolutely zero sense. What on earth does using blood as a guide actually mean? How are you even supposed to convert it? I tried once and got zilch. Tried again for nothing. Hit it 100 times, and still got nothing. Fortunately, I'm built different. Equipped with a full squad of 1,000 clones, the technique was sent out to all 1,000 of them at the exact same time, leaving 1,000 minds tackling the exact same problem through 1,000 different angles on the first try. A clone managed to lock down the exact vibe, instantly sinking that deep insight right back to me. Just like that, a third attempt was all it took for another to nail the initial rune before you even knew it. Another copy totally cracked how blood worked as a guide by try number 10. Everything clicked into place seamlessly. Operating just like a massive grid of parallel computers, 1,000 clones went to work. Every single breakthrough was broadcasted to the network in real time halfway through the first hour. One of the clones totally caught the vibe. An hour in, 100 separate copies had sketched out the first rune, without a flaw. Pushing to 90 minutes, 500 clones were already manipulating their first wisp of divine blood. 2 hours deep, clone number 999 stepped up and successfully flipped that initial chunk of blood over into raw offensive power as my eyes flew wide open. A faint crimson haze swirled right across my palm like a wisp of fog. Behold, my divine blood manifested in attack form. It actually worked, so I kept the momentum going, running all 1,000 duplicates at maximum capacity. Divine energy flooded through my veins like a raging torrent. A blood-red glow began leaking right out of my pores, radiating straight from my bones and skin, engulfing me in a fierce crimson blaze. Every single rune etched across the grand hall started resonating loudly from the stone floor to the walls. The ceiling erupted in a brilliant fusion of gold and scarlet light. The entire structure shook violently. Deep from within my physique, sharp snapping noises echoed out, resembling fracturing ice and breaking chains, as some inner limit burst wide open. A massive wave of crimson energy exploded outward. The chamber quaked intensely for about 10 seconds straight before absolute stillness settled back in. Fluttering my eyelids open, I pulled up my status panel. Attack power sat at an insane 11,500 trillion divine rating. No cap, it wasn't just 250 anymore. We're talking 11,500 trillion, making me 250 million times more op than before. Pulling myself up, I noticed the ancient tome had faded completely dark. Its magical utility was fully drained. Setting it carefully back onto the pedestal, I turned and walked away. Climbing those 18,000 steps back up, I kept moving at my casual, steady pace, admiring my upgraded metrics the entire journey. That previous dragon boasted a massive 10 trillion health pool, which I used to clear in a single blow right now. My attack output eclipsed its entire health bar by 115 times. Stepping outside into the biting wind, The desolate wasteland still carried a heavy reek of blood. With well over 1,000 lizard carcasses scattered across the dirt, their dark bodily fluids hardening into thick, crusty layers, my gaze drifted upward to that glowing gold shield high on the platform, where a solid 20-plus crew was still packed in tight out of all of them. Third brother spotted me first and immediately hollered that I had made it out. Instantly, every head snapped in my direction. I was still rocking a shattered inner armor set with totally wrecked hair, and a face smudged in soot, yet a massive grin plastered my face, and not a polite one either. It was that exact look you get when you low-key know you just hit the ultimate jackpot right then and there. Third brother's stomach dropped, while fourth brother muttered that I clearly bagged the reward, comparing my smug vibe to a fox that just raided a henhouse. They weren't wrong at all as I strolled across the sea of fallen foes, finally halting beneath the platform to lock eyes with the barrier above. Over 20 pairs of hostile eyes stared right back down at me. Planting my feet under the platform, I kept gazing up at the golden shield with my broken armor dangling loosely off my shoulders, hair a total mess. And that same smirk glued to my face. They were all watching me intently, trapped safely inside their little golden cave. Shrugging them off entirely, I kicked off a systematic sweep across the battlefield to harvest every single ring from the departed, checking every single body. From the gray-robed guy down to the green-armored dude Lutenio, along with the short guy, and the heavyset one, not to mention the tall, lanky fellow. Squatting down next to Jean Buin's remains right at the edge of the platform, I slid the gleaming silver-white ring right off his cold finger, gave it a quick wipe on my sleeve, and tucked it safely away. With over 90 rings in total, I scoured every single corpse, leaving 0 behind as my soul storage steadily stacked up into an absolute mountain of glorious loot. Third brother watched the whole scene with eyes bulging out of his head, blurting out disbelief over whether I was genuinely looting bodies one by one, only for fourth brother to confirm his worst fears, brushing the dust off my hands. I pushed myself up to a stand just as a massive rumble echoed across the sky, striking deep and heavy like a giant temple bell. A rolling thunder, the purple firmament split wide open, letting blinding streams of golden illumination flood through. A booming voice announced that the grand prize had officially been claimed, stating the entire realm would shut down in 60 seconds, and every surviving soul would be instantly yanked away back to their original starting points, faces lit up in sheer relief over inside the barrier. As third brother yelled out that it was finally over, fourth brother piped up, claiming every single planet needed to be put on notice about Su Lin being alive immediately, while Shun Ting Guang chimed in with a plan to orchestrate a massive manhunt across all high-tier worlds, just as Tai Chu locked eyes on me and insisted there was no way out, followed by the Crown Prince flashing that smug grin again to announce the name Kai Yun Ko was about to become totally history for me, while I just gazed up at the fractured sky, letting a warm shaft of golden sunlight wash over my face, completely unbothered and even cracking a subtle smile, before dropping the line that 1 minute was more than enough, prompting third brother to demand what on earth I meant, as I slowly raised my right hand up, where a deep blood-red energy began swirling in my palm, glowering intensely and thick like molten gore, though instead of turning that blast toward the barrier, I slammed it straight into my own chest, blowing a bowl-sized crater clean through my torso from front to back, instantly shattering my heart, fracturing my bones, and sending a violent geyser of blood spraying everywhere, leaving me standing there for a second to glance down at the devastating hole in my ribs before looking back up at their horrified faces with a grin, and asking if they seriously thought I'd hand them the satisfaction of spreading the news, causing third brother's brain to utterly short-circuit, fourth brother's jaw to drop a mile wide, Chun Ting Wang's eyes to bulge in sheer disbelief, Tai Chu's hand to start trembling uncontrollably, and the Crown Prince's fake smile to finally vanish for good, while my lifeless body tipped backward like a felled wall, crashing hard against the stone floor with a dull thud, as a dark pool of blood rapidly formed beneath me, with my dead eyes still staring upward and my lips locked in a lingering smile, a grin that practically screamed loud and clear. What can you guys honestly do to me when this vessel was nothing more than a clone? Meaning once it flatlines, the secret dies right along with it, leaving 0 chance for any of them to ever prove Su Lin survived, since there was no corpse left to inspect, no digital footprint or identity to track down, meaning they could scream into the void all they wanted, because who on earth would ever buy the story from a bunch of broken, shell-shocked survivors claiming a ghost from the past just crawled out of the shadows? Just as that final minute expired, and a blinding teleportation beam swallowed them whole, making them vanish from the platform in a flash, only for the ancient transit array outside at the realm entrance to suddenly flare back to chaotic life, spitting out the Crown Prince first in a bloody mess, with his trademark polite smirk completely replaced by a deeply haunted expression. Just before the rest of the terrified crew stumbled out right behind him Chun Ting Wang, Tai Chu, and Yang Ye, looking completely cooked. Out of roughly 20 survivors, not a single one could even stand, with everyone crawling or kneeling in the dirt. Completely wiped out on the dirt floor, their garments drenched in crimson gore, as fresh blood kept oozing from nasty gashes and ash caked their faces. Yet it wasn't the physical injuries triggering that intense dread, since a bone-deep terror was what truly gripped them, with raw, uncontrollable panic vividly etched across every pale face. While the Season Star Region Alliance Elder, whose surname was Yin, had already overseen countless mysterious realm openings, though he had honestly never witnessed anything quite like this, given that over 100 went in, but barely 20-odd made it back, even though less than a single day had officially ticked by, meaning someone had somehow claimed the bounty in under 24 hours, prompting him to demand an explanation of what happened from Chun Ting Wang, who knelt there with his shattered arm hanging completely limp, and managed to squeeze out just 2 words through clenched teeth, causing Elder Yin to frown deeply and ask what on earth he meant, before Shun Tianguang frantically screamed out the name, shouting that Su Lin, the infamous wolf shadow who was widely reported dead 2 years ago, was somehow still breathing and had actively surfaced inside the realm, making the assembly entrance instantly erupt into chaos, with dozens of panicked voices firing off chaotic questions all at once, shouting that it was impossible since Elder Shun Xian personally verified the corpse, and the infallible Death Stone had officially confirmed it. So how could he possibly be alive? What cultivation level was he at? And what madness did he pull off in there? Until Chun Ting Wang raised his hand, and everyone immediately went dead silent, taking a shaky, deep breath before starting to explain, revealing that Su Lin had masterfully disguised himself as Kai Yunzio, who served as the Crown Prince of Tianyuan Star, and thus successfully snuck right into the sacred realm, leading the elder to interrupt and ask where the real Kai Yunzio was, to which Shun Ting Wang replied that he was most likely sleeping with the fishes, since otherwise Su Lin could never have seamlessly stolen his exact identity. Though by that point I was already long gone, by the time those wretched survivors stumbled blindly out of the realm, leaving my own useless clone lying dead on the cold ground deep inside, with its chest blown wide open and heart completely shattered, and the dark blood dried up precisely according to my master plan, even though I already knew exactly what was bound to happen next, fully aware that they would start spilling secrets, and sure enough they did, as Chun Ting Wang wrapped up recounting the entire insane saga, leaving Star Region Alliance Elder Yin standing stiffly right there, while he listened intently to Chun Ting Wang meticulously laying every single wild detail out piece by excruciating piece, describing how I single-handedly baited over 2,000 level 120 lizards, and walked away without getting a single scratch on me, alongside how over 1,000 vicious monsters simultaneously jumped me, and got completely wrecked by their own bounce-back damage. No cap, while I just stood dead center looking totally fresh talking about how a massive level 128 dragon spawned in flexing a staggering 10 trillion divine HP pool, only for me to one-tap it effortlessly, then dropping the detail on how that beast went nuclear unleashing 80 trillion divine attack power. And I literally tanked ground zero like it was nothing, walking away with just fractured armor, and slightly messy hair. Elder Yin's hands started trembling uncontrollably. Despite having lived for over 10,000 years, such an insane feat was totally alien to him right after that. Chun Tian Guang filled him in on the reward. After vanishing underground for half an hour, I rolled back up grinning ear to ear like I had just hit the jackpot, leaving the elder to guess it must have been some ancient divine technique left behind by literal gods. Whatever it actually was, it was bound to level up my power even further, even though my stats were already completely off the charts. Then came the part that really blew their minds. Chun Ting Wang dropped the bomb, stating I straight up took my own life right in front of everybody, driving a single palm strike straight through my own chest, with my heart shattered and bones broken to pieces and blood spilling everywhere. They watched me collapse and flatline, while smirking chaos erupted right at the entrance with endless questions, as people whispered if I had lost my mind, wondering what the point was if I was actually dead for real. Chun Ting Guang broke it down crystal clear, explaining I possessed a trick to respawn somewhere else, which explained how I survived back when Elder Shang Xian took me out 2 years prior, choosing to off myself instead, because getting teleported out alongside the others might have meant the guards at the exit would have locked me down or run a soul search, spilling all my deepest secrets to the public, so I picked death to respawn in a totally safe zone. Elder Yin admitted he had never encountered a revival perk like that before in all his 10,000 years, pushing way past normal skill boundaries, subtly hinting it was likely a legendary loot drop hidden deep inside another secret realm. Tai Chu stood up and declared that my respawn location didn't matter at all. What really mattered was knowing for a fact that Su Lin was still breathing. While Yangya looked super stressed out and practically shaking, frantically urging everyone to evacuate back to their home planets and make tracks back to their kings right away. Su Lin is still breathing, and he's low-key way more stacked than 2 years ago. Handan Yang, just doodling circles in the dirt with a pebble, asked what good dropping intel does if nobody can track me down. And Yang Yi shot back that wasn't their headache, their only job was to hustle and deliver the tea. Pulling himself up, third brother muttered they needed to bounce home ASAP. Fourth brother gave a nod, shooting a sideways glance at fifth sister, propped against the doorway with blood still oozing slowly from her arm, keeping her lips tightly zipped. While a storm of mixed emotions raged in her eyes 2 years back, she only heard whispers of my insane flex from afar. Now she'd witnessed my true dominance firsthand, making every self-proclaimed prodigy look like an absolute joke. Dispersing in every direction, each crew raced to be the first to break the news to their rulers that Su Lin is back from the dead, and the entire star region was about to go up in flames again. Yet not a single soul knew my whereabouts, not one of them could sniff me out. So by the time they finally spilled the beans, I'd already be ghosting somewhere completely different, hitting harder than ever, armed with a technique turning my own lifeblood into pure offense. They had every right to be shook. My eyes fluttered open inside my room deep within the Holy Light Star Palace, surrounded by the familiar bed and golden curtains swaying lazily in the breeze. My avatar in the secret realm had bought the farm, but I was completely fine. Time to count my bag. Folding my legs crosswise on the mattress, I began sorting through upward of 90 space rings one after another, just like a squirrel unearthing all the nuts it stashed for winter. The green armor dude's ring held 300,000 divine coins, along with 2 sets of eternal grade gear and 0 divine power pills. Total trash. The gray-robed guy's ring gave me 80,000 coins, 12 pills, and 3 mythic grade sets, even more broke. Then I popped Lutinius' ring and instantly froze. Stashed inside were 40 divine power pills, each individually swaddled in delicate cloth and arranged neatly inside a tiny wooden case, resting right beside a letter. Scrawled across the envelope was a really sloppy handwriting earmarked straight as a dowry for my sister, Tinny. Every single pill had been hoarded tightly by him for his sister's big wedding day. Not even one single dose was ever used on himself, serving as his ultimate dowry. For a split second, I went totally silent, before gently sliding the box back into my soul storage with a sigh. The rest of the loot was systematically sorted through by me 2 hours later. Everything was completely tallied up, bringing our total haul to insane levels. A massive 6.8 million divine coins, plus 2,008 divine power pills, were secured. 2 full sets of level 109 eternal gear were sitting there, along with 17 extra sets ranging anywhere from 110 up to 119. A whole mountain of random materials was added to the pile alongside one totally unexpected find. A handwritten alchemy book featuring a faded gray cover and rough paper. Its edges were completely worn down, and the first page boldly read Level 1 Alchemy Beginner's Guide. Use it right away. I couldn't. Honestly, yet I safely stashed it away in its own private corner anyway, all across my 999 clones. Those pills were evenly distributed by me, giving 2 to each. I ordered 500 clones to absorb 500 pills first to test the waters, just to see if I could somehow pop off and break through to level 110. The next tier of the Holy Light technique was still completely missing from my inventory, meaning level 111 was totally out of reach for the time being. Right past my glass window frame, several maids were casually plucking flowers down in the garden, giggling away like absolutely nothing crazy had just gone down, clueless they were about the 2,000 lizards wiped out, or the massive dragon that literally went boom into a mushroom cloud, not to mention a scarred dude named Tinyu who kept 40 pills saved up for his sister, and ultimately flatlined right on a cold stone platform. With a sharp pull, I snapped the heavy curtains shut. Heavy footsteps echoed outside as Uncle Zhang stepped into the room while balancing a sleek tray holding 3 fresh outfit sets. Word from the Star King came down through him, summoning me to the council hall immediately. Consort Hua apparently figured I looked completely drained lately and had these new clothes sent over, prompting me to ask what the king actually wanted. No clue was what Uncle Zhang claimed to have, though major drama had apparently gone down inside the secret realm, driving the princess to rush back way ahead of schedule. My gaze shifted slightly sideways as my fingers casually tapped the wooden window sill. Twice, a dark gold robe was snatched up by me from the rack. A quick outfit change was done, and I stepped outside. Even before my hand could push open the massive council hall doors, third brother's loud voice was already booming straight through the thick wood, sounding like rolling thunder, shouting, "Su Lin is alive." My movements froze for a brief second before I shoved the heavy door wide open and stepped right inside. Right in the middle of the grand hall stood third brother, still drenched in gore, with his chest armor looking totally wrecked. Clutching a shattered half-sword, fourth brother stood right next to him. Fifth sister hung back with a bandaged arm and a complexion looking ghost-white. Father was locked down on his throne, gripping the armrests so hard his knuckles were completely bleached, spilling every single detail. Third brother was laying out the whole chaotic story about how Su Lin had completely catfished everyone by posing as the Tianyuan Star Prince, sneaking into the territory and straight up, pulling a massive horde of 2,000 monsters right to them, leaving a total bloodbath in his wake, bagging the top-tier reward, and then checking out early by ending his own life right in front of the crowd, driving a brutal punch straight through his very own chest, shattering his heart and splashing blood everywhere, even though he got yanked out via teleportation. Su Lin's actual shell stayed trapped inside. Rising from his seat, Father strode over toward third brother, demanding verification on the suicide story. Before third brother could even finish his sentence, the heavy doors behind him creaked wide open, and I stepped right in, rocking a dark gold robe with my hair slicked up and zero emotion on my face. All eyes instantly snapped over to lock onto me, while third brother choked out the first words. Ninth brother, Su Lin is somehow still kicking. That spooky wolf shadow from 2 whole years ago means he is totally alive, strutting into the council hall. I let my dark gold robe swish behind me, keeping my expression totally blank, like I was completely clueless about the drama. Third brother was planted smack in the middle of the floor, dripping in blood, with his armor thoroughly battered, screaming at the top of his lungs that Su Lin wasn't actually gone, as the grand doors swung wide. Every head in the room whipped around toward me, giving a slow blink and a puzzled frown. I dropped a casual question about who was supposed to be alive that completely set third brother off into a total meltdown. "It's Su Lin, the legendary wolf shadow. The guy is literally still breathing," shaking my head slowly. I brushed it off by saying that was straight up impossible. Elder Shang Xian himself personally inspected the corpse, and the death stone backed it up. So dead is definitely dead. Completely losing his mind, third brother insisted they had all witnessed it, saw Su Lin right there with their own 2 eyes, impersonating the Tianyuan Star Prince to absolute perfection, wiping out over 1,000 monsters like it was nothing, and one-shotting a massive level 128 dragon, tilting my head to the side. I asked if he had taken a heavy blow to the noggin while trapped inside that secret realm. He looked so utterly defeated, he was practically on the verge of tears, so I turned to fourth brother to back the story up, who was still standing there tightly gripping his snapped blade with a trembling hand. Fresh blood kept dripping down from his torn palm. He swore it was all legit. Su Lin somehow tanked an 80 trillion self-destruct blast right at ground zero. His armor completely shattered, his hair was a mess, and soot stained his face. Yet he was still breathing, so I dialed back my grin by just a fraction, acting as if I was actually starting to buy it. Then I whipped my head around toward fifth sister. She was slouching against a marble pillar, her arm wrapped in gauze, while crimson still soaked right through, keeping her gaze locked on the floor. She mumbled low that it was totally true, so I shifted my eyes to the crown prince last. His trademark gentle smile had completely vanished into thin air. It was deadass the first time I'd ever laid eyes on that look on him. Staring me down for a solid minute, he dropped 3 words, "It's true," making me drop my mask of composure. As I stumbled back until my spine slammed against the door frame, how could he possibly be alive? I whispered under my breath. Even the death stone had certified it. Everyone in the room knew for a fact he was a goner. Father was perched on his throne, silently tracking my every move, some unreadable scheme swirling behind those golden eyes glancing up at him. I demanded to know what was going down. Father ordered the crown prince to break down the whole story, starting right from square one. And the crown prince laid out every detail about the vicious monsters circling the arena platform, the rigged lottery, and that shady character Kai Yunzio who reeled in 400 beasts on the very first wave, then doubled it to 2,000 next, costing them 60 lives in the brawl. How Kai Yunzio just kicked back on the platform watching the carnage. How he exposed that he wasn't Yunzio in the slightest, but was Su Lin all along. And how everyone jumped him simultaneously, only to get blown back by the insane recoil damage. How only a holy light barrier managed to save their skins. How Su Lin single-handedly slaughtered every single remaining beast, claimed the loot, and then drove a fist right through his own chest cavity seconds before the dimension shut down for good. I stood frozen with my jaw hanging wide open, nailing the performance of absolute shock, shuffling toward the center. I pieced the puzzle pieces out loud, speaking with deliberate, slow caution, like I was carefully gluing a shattered-looking glass back together. So Su Lin apparently kicked the bucket 2 full years ago with his demise officially verified, yet somehow respawned inside the secret realm today, wiped out 1,000 fiends, one-shotted an apex dragon, walked off 80 trillion points of self-inflicted explosive damage, snatched the grand prize, and then offed himself all over again, locking eyes with my brothers. I wore an expression that practically screamed, "Could it be that you're low-key tripping on something?" with a slow nod. Third brother confirmed it. I demanded to know whether Suli was dead or alive. At that exact moment, silence was the only reply from anyone present. Rising from his seat, father stepped right into the center of the room. Su Lin didn't actually off himself just to die. He explained his self-termination was meant to bypass being teleported out. Remaining breathing when the realm sealed shut would have resulted in him being dumped straight at the front gates where a crowd was already waiting. Hence, taking his own life a single second prior to the teleport was his play. His corpse remains inside while he respawns safely in some other location. My eyes went wide as I blurted out a question, given that people can somehow return from the grave. Father chimed in to clarify. It's clear as day that Su Lin possesses some sort of cheat code revival perk. Elder Shang Xian totally wasted him 2 whole years back. The Death Stone verified it. Yet here he is making a comeback. The bottom line is that dying and respawning is totally a thing for him, letting my facial expressions cycle from confusion straight to full comprehension. I shifted seamlessly into shock and sheer terror. Stumbling backward, I let my legs give out and slumped into an armchair. Are you telling me this guy is literally unkillable? I uttered in disbelief. Not a single soul answered because nobody had a clue, lowering my voice to a whisper. I confessed that I had zero concept of how anyone could possibly battle a menace like that on the inside. Meanwhile, holding back my amusement was a struggle, as the edges of my lips desperately wanted to curl upward into a grin. Observing my terrified expression seemed to give third brother some comfort, making him look visibly relieved for a split second. Even the ninth prince, armed with his god-tier talent, had been shook to his core, so at least I wasn't alone in panicking. Third brother then brought up the massive loot that Su Lin had bagged from the realm. Most likely an ancient, overpowered divine technique. A heavy frown creased deeply across father's forehead, admitting he lacked specifics. Third brother noted that Su Lin had strolled out grinning ear to ear, looking like a sneaky fox that had just raided the henhouse. It simply had to be something insanely epic. Slumped in my seat, I let out a hollow laugh, not out of joy, but from sheer numbness. 2 years ago, I pointed out, Su Lin treated Origin Star like his own personal sandbox, and fast forward 2 years later, he's turned the secret realm into his personal playground too. Bro is literally living his best life rent-free. Breaking the silence, fifth sister suddenly demanded to know what I had just mumbled, reciting it right back. I watched third brother freeze for a moment before he joined in with a hollow, bitter chuckle of his own. Dead silence fell across the hall once more. Right after that, Elder Shuang Xian stepped up to the front, rocking a head of white hair and a face looking like a blackened pot. Back 2 years ago, he had burned through a millennium of his own lifespan just to fire up the time reversal mirror, tracked down my weak spot, took out Shui Wei, and personally verified my dead body. With his own 2 eyes, he watched the Death Stone light up, yet here came someone dropping the bombshell that I was still breathing. He turned to father and threw out a wild claim that totally fried the entire room. If Su Lin could pull off posing as the wolf shadow back then, and Shi Yun Zio right now, what's stopping him from ghosting as anybody else? Instantly, absolute chaos broke out in the hall. Everyone started throwing suspicious side-eyes at each other. Some went pale as ghosts, while other folks had shaky hands. Buddies, who had just been chilling shoulder to shoulder, abruptly sidestepped away from one another. Third brother felt a major knot in his stomach. He had spent hours hanging on the same platform as me, chatting it up with zero clue. Now it hit him that I could literally be anyone, anywhere, maybe even standing right inside this room. Father swept his piercing, golden gaze across every single face, and not a soul dared to lock eyes with him. Then the fourth elder, Shang Tianji, chimed in from his quiet corner, a veteran eagle-eyed geezer over 8,000 years deep, who barely ever spoke up yet always dropped the most crucial intel. He mapped out the whole pattern. My MO had consistently stayed the exact same, swapping identities entirely. My disguises had previously duped even level 190 powerhouses, with only that time reversal mirror managing to expose me before. Now that I had offed myself and was bound to respawn elsewhere, the real million-dollar question was who I'd turn into next. He went ahead and answered his own prompt. I would inevitably become someone they already knew. Some high-ranking prince or clan prodigy, blending in seamlessly like water dropping into water, totally invisible. At that point, he pulled a stone straight out of his sleeve, roughly fist-sized, jet black, featuring a crimson light pulsing right at its core, beating like a living heart. Dubbing it a blood verification stone, he explained clearly that a single drop of blood would instantly expose. if anyone was carrying Holy Light Star bloodline. Every single soul on Holy Light Star happens to carry a trace of the founding ancestors' DNA. While I could easily fake my appearance and energy signature, and even mimic weird ability fluctuations, faking a bloodline was totally off the table. A bloodline isn't just some random skill. It's your core root. Third brother instantly lit up like a drowning man who just grabbed a floating plank. He was ready to test everyone on the spot. My eyebrow twitched because he was totally right. I definitely couldn't fake my lineage if they ran a test right then. I'd get exposed instantly. Being the son of the Holy Light Star King was impossible. Without possessing that pure bloodline, I'd be caught red-handed on the spot. Fourth brother quickly pointed out that testing 1 billion people one by one was totally unrealistic, just like that. Third brother's high energy deflated until Elder Tianji stepped in to say they didn't need mass screenings. They only had to check those with access to divine power pills, meaning royals and high-ranking nobles. Basically, anyone holding any serious rank or position, which amounted to less than 1 in 10,000 people. If I tried sneaking around disguised as royalty, just to collect my monthly pill rations, passing a blood test would be mandatory, or I'd get nothing cut off from pills. My cultivation speed would crawl to a dead stop, and without fast progression, I wouldn't pose any threat at all. But he didn't stop there. He suggested this shouldn't be limited to just Holy Light Star. Every single planet across the star region should implement strict monthly bloodline checks. Since I had wiped out the royal children from all top 100 planets in the secret realm, they all had a massive target painted on my back. Planets ranked below the top 100 were mere vassals anyway, totally dependent on the major worlds for their pill supplies. Any minor planet that dared to not cooperate would instantly get their resources cut off. A low murmur of approval rippled through the hall. Father stood up and dropped 4 strict decrees. Every planet must be notified about mandatory monthly bloodline testing, starting tomorrow right here on Holy Light Star. For all royals and high officials, exclusive verification stones would be distributed strictly through the royal family, and anyone caught lacking the proper planetary bloodline would be demoted to slave status on the spot. Third brother was flashing a massive, wicked grin as he turned his eyes toward me to check my reaction. I tried pulling off a smile too, even though he thought it looked kind of sus. He didn't read too much into it, assuming I just wasn't the grinning type. Meanwhile, my brain was low-key crunching numbers, monthly blood screenings, and verification checks. Every single person interacting with divine power pills gets audited, and failing means 0 pills. No pills translates to a massive roadblock. My 1,000 clones grinding together daily only net a meager 2 divine power points from ambient energy, taking a grueling 500 days per level. Keeping my expression totally chill, I tapped my knee twice, chiming in to hype up the 4th Elder's strategy, calling it an absolute masterclass, arguing that even if Su Lin possessed game-breaking skills, he wouldn't score a single pill. Leaving us with plenty of breathing room to track him down, Elder Tianji shot me a quick glance, gave a single nod, and turned away. The meeting wrapped up as I filed out with the crowd maintaining a steady pace, and a poker face. My thoughts were racing, because passing the blood test was impossible. My blood originated from Blue Star instead of Holy Light Star, forcing me to either dodge the test or find a loophole, leading my steps straight to Consort Hua's palace, where maids were busy arranging dinner. Amidst the sweet aroma of osmanthus cake, propping her chin in her hands across the table, she smiled and asked what the briefing was all about. I brushed it off as nothing major, merely some complications inside the secret realm. Since the brothers returned prematurely, curiosity drove her to ask if casualties were high. Upon my nod, her smile instantly vanished. Reaching across the tabletop, she gently took my hand and spoke my name, Your Honor, pointing out that whenever something weighs on my mind, my right eyebrow habitually twitches, causing my fingers to freeze mid-bite. I frantically skimmed through Shan Yuan's memories, finding 0 record of her ever mentioning this. This specific detail was completely absent from his mind, leaving me with 2 distinct theories. Either Consort Hua was actively probing me, or that eyebrow tick was so microscopic that only a mother would ever spot it, much like how a guy is oblivious to his own snoring, while his partner catches every single time. Either way, dwelling on it right then was totally off the table. Shoving the entire osmanthus cake straight into my mouth, I mumbled to her that she had it all wrong. With a soft tilt of her head and a grin, she let out, maybe her vision was just acting up with age. Her knuckles, however, were gripping the teacup so tight they were completely ghost white. Sensing she was low-key stressing, I dropped my chopsticks right there and filled her in on the mandatory blood checks. Starting tomorrow, monthly testing kicks off for anyone who has ever touched those divine power pills. Even the princess isn't exempt, straight from the father's orders. Her gentle facade melted away as she slammed her cup down with a sharp clatter that echoed across the table. Calling the whole thing absolute nonsense, she insisted I was the king's own flesh and blood, meaning my royal lineage shouldn't require any stupid proof. In her view, this wasn't about hunting down Su Lin at all. It was a blatant attempt to humiliate me. Strolling slowly over to the window, she dropped a line that made my chest drop a beat. She casually asked what my game plan would be if the screening happened to reveal that I wasn't pure holy light bloodline after all. What was she even trying to imply here? Was it just a random what if, or did she actually know something? I brushed it off with a fake laugh, claiming she had to be joking. How could anyone doubt my holy light heritage? Freezing in place, she stared right through me for 3 long seconds, before flashing a smile and admitting she was just talking garbage. She told me to go get some rest and hit the training hard. Right as I hit the doorway, her voice trailed after me, reminding me to bundle up in warmer clothes. Her smile felt totally fake and hollow as I stood there watching her. She looked so tiny and fragile in that moment, resembling some helpless little wildflower bathed in the warm afternoon golden light. Yet her fingers were still clamped white around that cup. Walking back down the corridor alongside Uncle Zhang, he brought up that Consort Hua had barely been catching any sleep over the past few days. Late at night, she would just sit motionless by the window panes, staring blankly into the pitch-black void. He had a gut feeling something heavy was weighing on her mind. Back inside the quiet sanctuary of my room, I slumped back against the closed door and stared up at the barren ceiling. 2 separate things she said just refused to add up. That weird comment about my eyebrows was definitely not part of Shang Yuan's usual routine behavior. It was something she had only just picked up on recently. And coupled with that sudden blood test inquiry, it was obvious she was fishing for something specific. An imperial prince's mother should never be caught guessing like this. Was it possible she already figured out I wasn't her kid if she actually knew the truth? Why did she keep me around instead of outing me? What stopped her from getting payback for her real flesh and blood? She's low-key using this fake son for some shady plan. Consort Hua was way deeper than I gave her credit for, yet tomorrow was shaping up to be a whole different beast. That dreaded blood verification test, my veins definitely don't carry the Holy Light Star bloodline. Everything in my system traces back to Blue Star. Stepping up to that test means I'm instantly canceled, losing the 9th Prince status, and all those broken God-tier talent perks, pulling in 300 divine power pills every single month plus. Unlocking the 2nd layer of the Holy Light technique. All of those perks I haven't even secured yet would instantly vanish into thin air. Missing out on that 2nd layer means my level is permanently capped past 110 desperate times called for action. So I pinged every single one of my 1,000 clones, dig up any piece of intel on that blood verification stone right now. Find out how to fake the results, or completely ghost the system check. If anyone in history ever pulled it off, reports came flooding back through the dark hours. One report after another confirming you simply can't fool it. That relic only reacts to actual bloodline resonance imbued with the founding ancestors' essence, deep. Inside, it responds strictly to matching genetic signatures. 0. Match means 0 resonance whatsoever. Some fool previously tried a full blood swap. Total fail because true bloodline goes way deeper than physical blood. It's wired into the soul's root. And you can't swap your roots. An absolute powerhouse once cast a forbidden technique to fake his bloodline. The verification stone violently imploded the exact second they touched it. The guy barely lived through it, but his cover was totally blown on the spot. One ancient text dropped a grim hint. The only possible workaround was doing a full-body snatch, hijacking a body. I stared blankly at those words flashing across the screen. Every single one of my clones branched directly from me, meaning they all share that exact same Blue Star blood. Even if I flatline and jump consciousness into another clone, it's the exact same bloodline. Hijacking a legitimate Holy Light native's physical vessel is the only way out, unfortunately. My current toolkit doesn't feature that kind of cheat code. My Eye of Rebirth is strictly built for reading memories. It's completely useless for body-swapping shenanigans. And tomorrow was crunch time. Pulling a legitimate Holy Light bloodline out of thin air was impossible once my cover gets blown. My whole operation goes down in flames. After racking my brain for hours, one specific person suddenly popped into my head. Consort Hua and her cryptic warning from earlier today. What happens if that blood test proves you're not actually Holy Light bloodline? She practically spilled the tea that she figured it out, yet blowing my cover wasn't her move. Vengeance for her actual kid wasn't even on her radar, evidently. She needed this fake offspring for some Loki scheme. Laying it all out on the table with her might work out. Maybe she'd pull some strings to help me survive tomorrow's test. Right when I started scheming to track her down, a gentle tap echoed softly on my door. Uncle Zhang's voice slipped through, sounding like a faint whisper. Consort Hua is here. She came straight to me. Pulling the door open, I let her step inside. She materialized in the moonlight rocking a simple white dress. Her hair hung loose, while her face looked ghost white. Clutched tightly in her hand was a tiny cloth bundle ushering her, and she took a seat without dropping a single word and set the bundle right down on the table. Casting a quick look at both of us, Uncle Joan quietly pulled the door shut. Silence filled the room with moonlight washing over the floor. Concert Hua planted herself right across from me, her knuckles turning bone white against that small cloth bundle, raising her eyes to meet mine. She dropped 5 heavy words: "You are not, you honor." No beating around the bush, and 0 cryptic hints, just laying it straight out while I tried to play it cool, laughing it off as a joke until she told me to cut the act. Dropping the bomb that she knew I was actually Su Lin, freezing up for 3 long seconds, I finally asked, when she managed to piece it together. She replied, ever since the exact day I touched down on Holy Light Star. Tracking back to Origin Star, she knew her real son was gone. How I managed to snag his memories remained a mystery to her, yet certain tiny details and weird habits, things even I probably flew right past, without noticing. A mother who spent 22 years studying her child could spot those instantly blindfolded. Gotta hand it to her, though. Every single memory belonging to Shang Yuan had been looted by me, leveraging the power of the Eye of Rebirth, fooling myself into thinking my disguise was bulletproof. Yet standing before a mother, it leaked like a sieve. Pressing her for the reason she kept my secret quiet, she bypassed a direct answer, entirely sliding the cloth bundle across the wooden table and commanding me to unwrap it to find a resting jade pendant built fist-sized and pitch black, its smooth surface glowing with a rhythmic red pulse at the core. Dubbing it a blood-sealed jade pendant, she explained it holds the power to temporarily lock down someone's blood droplet. Her dad handed it over to her, hidden deep inside her system. From some bizarre, classified dimension, he had managed to score a pair of them. Though pretty much useless for anything else, they could totally help me clear tomorrow's blood screening. I asked her to spill details about her home world. Rising from her seat, she drifted silently toward the glass. A long, eerie silhouette was cast across the wooden floorboards. Jiang Xiaomai was revealed to be her actual legal birth name. Hailing from a pathetic little world ranked 1,372nd on the charts, known as Sangzia Star, it was super tiny and weak. 0 geniuses were born there, and resources were totally non-existent. Quietly tending to their herb farms was basically all her people did to survive. Then disaster struck when Holy Light Star pulled up, demanding a rare crop called Snow Heart Grass, which could be brewed down into potent elixirs. They targeted elite-level 190 cultivators. For a full century, Song Shui Star paid heavy tribute without fail. Once the harvest completely dried up, making any further shipments impossible, Holy Light Star instantly accused them of hiding supplies. They dispatched an entire armada, consisting of 100 war vessels led by Elder Shang Xian. The absolute strongest warrior on her planet barely scraped level 180. A single day was all it took to wipe them out. Her entire world vanished, taking her father, mother, brother, and every single compatriot down into the grave. She wasn't even present when the slaughter went down. Being away on a diplomatic trip to Holy Light Star saved her physically. Catching wind of the massacre inside a Shadian that night, she collapsed onto the cold tiles, weeping until dawn broke. When morning came, the tears had completely dried up. Vengeance became the only obsession consuming her mind. Yet she was hopelessly weak, incapable of taking down even a random palace foot soldier. Word eventually reached her that a young maiden from a low-tier Holy Light noble house was being drafted to serve as a royal consort for the king. Hating royal life, that unfortunate girl was plotting to escape. Consort, whoa! Jiang Xiaoma tracked her down and noticed an uncanny resemblance. They looked at least 80% alike, so she ambushed and eliminated the girl. After burying the body deep in the mountains, she slipped into the victim's clothes, matched her exact hairstyle, and boldly stepped through the palace gates in her place. For over 2 decades, she had kept up this elaborate masquerade. Assassinating the king with her own hands was her initial goal, until harsh reality hit her. The tyrant was simply too overpowered, even if he stood completely defenseless and let her strike. Back then, she couldn't touch him directly because you were already on her radar. Loki, she harbored hope that her boy might eventually grow powerful enough to flip Holy Light Star upside down. Should he fall short of that strength, she would take that deep, gnawing regret straight to her grave. Then I stepped into the picture, passing myself off as her offspring and unlocking a god-tier talent. She confessed she ought to despise me, wishing she could tear me to pieces for snuffing out her kid. Yet I was also her absolute only shot at payback. Perched on the edge of the mattress with the jade pendant in my grip, I kept it 100 with her. She gets me past the blood test, and I deliver her vengeance, simple as that. Caught off guard by how fast I agreed, I told her straight up there was nothing to stall over. She needed retribution, I needed to clear that exam, so we were both securing the bag. Besides, taking down Holy Light Star was already on my to-do list anyway, meaning helping her was essentially helping myself. On the same wavelength, she noted. I didn't sugarcoat it, letting her know I roll with total transparency around partners. When I inquired about how the pendant actually functioned, she broke it down. A single drop of holy light blood gets sealed inside it, which then routes that essence straight into my bloodstream. Whenever the verification stone scans me, I simply tap into that exact drop, provided it traces back to the holy light bloodline. The stone lights right up. Musing over this, I remembered I had Shang Yuan's body stashed safely in my soul storage, where time stands completely still, and everything remains frozen precisely as it was the moment I stored it. Asking if she cared to look upon her son's remains, I watched a fleeting shadow of grief wash over her features for a split second, before her composure locked back in. She was a woman who had already weathered the absolute wipeout of her entire realm and the loss of everyone she held dear. Quietly, she declined, figuring this wasn't the right setting. His most radiant version would forever thrive inside her memories. Checking if she had any objections to me using her son's blood, I waited through a few heavy seconds of silence. She pointed out that his honor was already gone, and nothing she did could ever bring him back. Yet if he knew his blood could help dismantle Holy Light Star and avenge his grandfather, his grandmother, his uncle, and their whole clan, he would have totally been on board. Long before the sun came up, the palace bell began to toll. It wasn't just ringing once or twice like usual. Instead, it pounded non-stop, crashing relentlessly like ocean waves. The entire palace trembled from the sound. My eyes snapped open, immediately dropping to my chest, where the blood-sealed jade pendant had been pressed against me all night long. It was still warm after 12 hours of holding that sealed blood. Uncle Zhang rushed in to let me know that the ceremony was kicking off in half an hour, meaning every single prince and princess had to assemble down at the Grand Temple. Slipping into my white ceremonial robe, I stepped right out the door. The palace looked completely different today. Golden banners were hung everywhere, flashing the holy light star and sun symbols, while armed guards stood frozen like stone statues every 10 steps. Uncle Zhang mentioned that this was the absolute first blood verification ceremony in Holy Light Star's entire history. Every single elder, every minister, and all the noble families had packed the grounds, and even the 3 grand ancestors who normally stayed hidden away in seclusion had shown up. Those 3 grand ancestors were easily sitting at level 195 each, paired with Father at a massive 199, Elder Xing Xin holding down 193, and a whole mob of elders over level 190. If I slipped up today, I'd basically be a sitting duck in a trap. Dying wasn't even the real issue since I had my clones, but getting locked down and having my soul scanned would totally blow my cover. Plus, I still desperately needed this identity to unlock the second layer of the Holy Light technique. As the oldest structure on Holy Light Star, the Grand Temple featured imposing black stone walls webbed with vein-like patterns. Above the towering 10-meter doors read the words, Holy Light Ancestor Bloodline Eternal. More than 10,000 people choked the massive plaza outside, all draped in white ceremonial robes, royals, officials, family heads, and every single one of their direct heirs. All eyes locked onto me the second I walked through. Murmurs followed my steps. Isn't that the god-level prodigy? Why does he gotta get tested too when he's literally the king's flesh and blood? There's nothing to prove here. Passing right by Consort Hua standing among the other consorts, our gazes crossed for a fraction of a second, before both of us quickly looked away, stepping inside the temple where an impossibly high ceiling loomed above. Carvings depicting past star kings crushing their rivals lined the walls. Right in the middle stood a massive centerpiece. Rising 10 meters high was a statue of our founding ancestor, Shang Wu-Dai, suited up in gleaming golden armor and leaning hard on a colossal sword. Resting right at its feet was the verification stone, clocking in at 10 times the size of the one Elder Tianji showed off yesterday, rocking a rough, pitch-black surface with an eerie red light pulsing like a heartbeat. A circle of 12 elders tightly surrounded the stone, each flexing over level 190 and clutching a registry in hand. Lounging off to the side were the 3 grand ancestors. First was a skeletal old geezer whose suffocating aura hit me from dozens of meters away, followed by a bald dude with flashing golden pupils who sliced me with a glance sharp as a knife, and finally a cold-faced woman staring dead at the statue. Dressed in fresh armor, third brother stood right next to me, looking low-key stressed while trying to play it cool. When he asked if I got some solid sleep, I told him I crashed fine, leaving him shook that I wasn't even sweating it. I clapped back that I wasn't Su Lin, then asked if maybe he was actually a Loki Su Lin in disguise, seeing how his face was turning a weird shade of green. The guy nearly choked on air, prompting fourth brother to jump in and say I was just trolling him. Up at the very front stood the crown prince, rocking his signature warm smile like nothing was wrong. He gave my shoulder a reassuring pat and told me to chill out, claiming that a single drop of blood wouldn't hurt at all. Decked out in a golden ceremonial robe and a crown embedded with 12 glowing crystals, Father walked in. Dropping to his knees before the ancestor statue, he officially declared the blood verification ceremony open to cleanse the bloodline and sweep out any trash. With that, he dropped a single command: "Begin!" An ornate golden bell mounted on the ceiling started ringing all on its own. The crimson glow radiating from the verification stone intensified rapidly. The screening commenced by rank, with Father going first. Slicing open his finger, he let a single droplet of golden blood strike the stone. Instantly, the red light blew up, blending gold and crimson hues together like an epic fireworks show. As the bell tolled for a long stretch, Elder Shang Xian stepped up to announce a flawless bloodline, certified as the direct lineage of the founding ancestor. The 3 grand ancestors stepped up right after him, all checking out completely pure, followed by all 12 elders, who also passed cleanly before the family heads took their turn. Yang Li, Sima, and Wang stepped up sequentially. Blood dripped one after another, and flashes of crimson exploded everywhere as the bell rang out. They stepped back down something low-key fascinating. Caught my eye, not every single person strolled up there feeling bulletproof. Certain guys had hands that were visibly shaking with trembling lips and sweat-soaked backs. They retreated from the platform. What on earth were they stressing over? They were terrified they didn't actually possess the holy light bloodline, which was wild to watch. Then the royal princes took their turns. Leading the pack was the crown prince himself. Blood hit the altar. A pure blinding light exploded outward. On his walk back, he paused right next to me, dropping a chill word to tell me not to stress. Third brother headed up next with palms dripping wet, while wiping his hands continuously on his outfit first. He squeezed his eyelids shut tight like he was waiting for a death sentence. A brilliant flash of light burst forth, releasing a massive exhale. He muttered that it nearly gave him a heart attack. My voice asked him what he was freaking out about. He replied that he had no clue, just terrified of not actually carrying the holy light blood, meaning 2 decades of life would be totally wasted. Fourth brother's hands were trembling so aggressively. He needed 3 separate attempts just to draw blood. Fifth sister approached, carrying her bandaged arm, relying instead on her uninjured right hand. She dropped her blood cleanly and expressionlessly, revealing a pure reaction subsequently. The remaining princes went down the line, and every single one of them passed. Eighth brother walked forward, muttering under his breath. The whole time fragments of his speech caught my ears. Gotta pass, please gotta pass. His fingers shook heavily the moment his blood hit the stone surface. The crimson light erupted, sending eighth brother into a near collapse. Swept by sheer relief, he caught his balance, flashed a forced grin, and stopped right beside me on his return trip. Ninth brother, you're up next. Pure malice dripped from that smile of his, ignoring him completely. I, the ninth prince, Shun, watched the entire great hall drop into dead silence. Every set of eyes locked onto me as I marched forward with a steady rhythm. Trudging past the towering giant statue, straight up to the stone platform, the verification monolith sat directly in front of my face, its crimson aura pulsing rhythmically like a living heartbeat. Slipping a compact dagger out from my waistline, I pressed the cold metal blade firmly against my fingertip, feeling the chilling steel. I froze in place for a single second, while the jade pendant resting against my chest suddenly grew scorching hot, getting blazing hot, just like a piece of burning iron. That's when I made a quick little nick, and a single crimson droplet hit the stone surface. Instantly, the red radiance blew up. No slow glow here. It was a total eruption, acting like the artifact had been Loki waiting on me the whole time. Bright crimson light shot straight toward the ceiling, crashing hard against it alongside the loud toll of the bell. The entire sacred temple trembled, and that bell rang way louder than it had for anyone else all day. Elder Shuang Xian broadcasted the verdict of a pure bloodline. Pulling my hand back, I turned around and strolled away. As I passed by eighth brother, I paused for a sec to drop a casual note about how his lips had been shaking earlier. His face instantly turned dark once I got back to my spot. Third brother nudged my arm, asking if I wasn't even a little bit nervous. I hit him back with a question of why I should be. Since I was father's son after all. He pondered it for a moment, cracked a grin, and admitted fair point. My gaze drifted back to the giant statue's sword, where that old crack was still visible, stretching from the tip down to the handle like a dried-up riverbed. Against my chest, the jade pendant was gradually losing its heat. The testing process rolled right along after the princes finished up, moving next to the grand family's direct heirs, then the branch members, and finally the lower officials. Ranked from high to low, the exact same routine repeated endlessly. Walk on up, drop your blood, watch for the red light and bell. Then step back down until something actually happened. A middle-aged guy dressed in gray official robes stepped up to the dais, carrying level 120 clearance, working as a steward right out of the Internal Affairs office. With his legs trembling and his forehead soaked in sweat, he let his blood fall onto the stone. Not a single thing lit up, leaving absolute dead silence. Staring blankly at the stone face, the man turned white as paper, while fresh blood continued dripping slowly from his wounded finger. One drop, then 2 drops hit the floor. Yet still no light appeared. Elder Xingxin casually asked for his name. Lu Chang gave his position, identifying as a third-rank steward. Then came the heavy verdict: take him away. Guards instantly grabbed him while he screamed that he wasn't a spy, arguing desperately that he had lived on Holy Light Star for 40 solid years. As they dragged him out of the area, his frantic cries echoed loudly down the dim corridor until they finally faded into complete nothingness. Watching him get hauled off, I knew he definitely wasn't me, though it left me wondering, who was he really? Just an undercover spy from some alien planet? Or a low-key survivor like Consort Hua whose whole world had been totally wiped out and stayed low-key hiding right here ever since? 3 more suspects were unmasked throughout the day, comprising a female official from the Grand Ancestry Office, a deputy hailing from the Weapons Bureau, and a sturdy guard captain holding down the east gate. While the woman wept and the deputy let out curses, the guard captain remained dead silent before abruptly breaking free from the guards by the door and violently slamming his head right into a stone pillar. Blood splattered 3 feet as he flat-out died on the spot. The hall fell eerie and quiet for a moment, before Elder Shuang Xian's flat voice picked right back up from morning, stretching to noon and finally dusk. Over 10,000 people were screened for non-holy light bloodlines, with 0 connections to Su Lin being found at all. Every single one turned out to be planted deep cover agent's father, ordered full-scale investigations into who sent them all. Kneeling before the ancestral statue for one final time, he officially declared that Holy Light Star would tolerate 0 impurities whatsoever. The bell rang out short and sharp, striking like a heavy war drum. And then he dismissed everyone present. I shuffled out right alongside the crowd. Elder Tianji blocked my path at the temple entrance, standing there casually with his hands buried in his sleeves. Those piercing hawk eyes locked onto me for 3 full seconds before he gave a nod and walked away. What on earth were those 3 seconds about? Did he actually spot something off? Or was he just being paranoid about everybody? I kept walking because it didn't even matter. I'd officially cleared today's test. The jade pendant had turned completely ice-cold, resting hard and dead against my chest like an ordinary rock. 12 hours of sealed blood with half still remaining inside. Back in my room, I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. They were shaking, and I wasn't faking it. They were genuinely trembling, with over 10,000 pairs of eyes tracking me, and 3 grand ancestors pressing down heavily with raw pressure the exact second that blood hit the stone. My heart nearly gave out, but I somehow pulled through the day. Once the blood ceremony wrapped up, I sat by my window, snacking on some osmanthus cake, while gazing out at the golden sky. The jade pendant had gone totally icy cold against my chest, just like a dead stone, before Uncle Zhang walked in, handing me a golden scroll from Father. Unrolling it, I read Shang Wudai's decree. The trial kicks off in 3 days, guys. It's all going down at the trial tower. Any royal kid under 100 years old is totally welcome to join. Featuring 9 floors, clearing each one scores you a sweet loot drop. Conquer that final 9th floor, and you'll lock down the founding ancestors' ultimate grand prize. Right at the bottom, there's one more low-key line added. A built-in bloodline scanner is rigged directly into the tower. Anyone stepping inside without that holy light bloodline is instantly toast the second they cross the threshold. Tapping the scroll twice, I ran through another mental bloodline check. Catching up with Uncle Zhang, I picked his brain about the tower. According to him, the founding ancestor Shang Wudai personally constructed it prior to ascending to a higher dimension. It flings open its doors just once every century, staying accessible for a mere 3 days. 9 levels of brutal trials await, stacked with actual artifacts Shang Wudai used back in the day. Yet across millions of years, not a single soul has ever cleared that 9th floor. Father managed to make it up to 7, while the 3 grand ancestors maxed out at level 6. Over the past 10,000 years, barely anyone has even managed to push past 5. I pressed him on whether the tower's bloodline sensor operated just like the verification stone. Uncle Zhang looked pretty shook that I cared about that over the rewards, instead of talking about the loot. He explained that it's similar but cranked up way higher. While the stone only samples a single drop of blood, the tower evaluates your entire physical form. The moment you breach that entryway, if your lineage doesn't check out, the tower's divine energy shreds you to pieces instantly. You won't even have time to process it. Giving him a nod, I let him know I got it and waved him off. Right as he was heading out, he dropped a hint that consort Hua wanted me to drop by for a visit. She had supposedly baked some osmanthus cake. Leaning against the cool window sill, I turned it over in my mind. The jade pendant could conceal a drop of Shang Yuan's blood and successfully trick the verification stone. Whether it could fool an entire fortress crafted by a level 200 god, though, was totally up in the air. Still, if the prizes were genuinely that insanely good, holding treasures left behind by an entity who completely ruled over all second-tier planets, for a solid 100,000 years, grinding through this was my only play. At worst, I'd just burn through a single clone, no big deal. Downing the final pastry, I made tracks straight toward consort Hua's palace. An entire table loaded with sweet osmanthus cakes was waiting for me there. There were easily 30 pieces piled up. Resting her chin in her hands, she watched me devour them with a knowing grin. Right after that, she brought up the trial, fully aware of what was going down. The entire palace was low-key buzzing about it. Eighth brother was out there flexing, claiming he'd clear the 6th floor. Third brother was bragging about hitting at least the 5th. Out of nowhere, she popped the question about what my target was. I told her I'd push it as far as my limits would take me. Pushing herself up from her seat, she drifted over toward the window. Then she dropped the exact thought that was already bouncing around in my head. That tower is equipped with bloodline detection tech. It's way heavier duty than the verification stone. Sure, the jade pendant completely tricked the stone. Whether it could fool the tower as well was a total toss-up to her. I asked if she was genuinely clueless about how it would hold up. She explained that her old man had handed down the pendant to her. He told her it could lock down a single drop of blood inside, and seamlessly merge that energy with whoever wore it. Even so, it was still just a piece of external gear. Far from true bloodline. The stone only checks one drop, so the pendant could fake that easily. That little trick was totally enough for the stone. The tower, however, might do a full-body scan on anyone stepping inside. Giving any kind of guarantee was completely off the table for her. My gaze drifted upward to stare at the ceiling. A thin, jagged crack ran across the surface, looking like a dried-up riverbed. Without missing a beat, she spelled out the harsh reality I couldn't dodge. Avoiding it was impossible, exactly as I already knew. Being the 9th prince blessed with a god-tier talent came with heavy baggage. Every single century, this high-stakes trial rolls around again. Showing up for it is mandatory for all members of the royal family. If I ghosted, father would immediately start asking awkward questions. Eighth brother would pry, and the whole royal court would start whispering. Bailing out completely basically screams that I'm hiding something shady. And hiding something means a massive storm is brewing. She wasn't wrong at all. I had 0 other plays left. Stepping into that arena was my only move.